The office is quiet, a tomb of silent monitors and sleeping chairs. But for you, the silence is a roar. The only light is the cold, blue glow of the screen, painting your face with numbers and words that have lost their meaning. Outside, the city sleeps, but inside your mind, the traffic is relentless. A list of tomorrow's tasks collides with yesterday's regrets. A notification flashes, a curated image of someone else's perfect life, and a familiar, hollow ache settles in your chest. You feel a profound sense of being stuck, as if the walls of the room are slowly closing in, not the physical walls, but invisible ones, built from pressure, from expectation, from a constant, humming anxiety that has become the soundtrack to your life. This state, this feeling of being trapped, is the malady of the modern world. We call it stress, we call it burnout, we call it anxiety, but it is fundamentally a prison built by the most sophisticated tool we have, our own mind. The logical, analytical mind that can build bridges and cure diseases becomes our jailer when turned inward. It seeks a solution to sadness, a logical reason for our unease. It tries to think its way out of suffering, creating endless loops of worry and self-criticism. The more we struggle against the bars of our own thoughts, the more real and solid they become. We are caught in a paradox, trying to solve an emotional puzzle with a logical key that will never fit the lock. But what if there was another way? What if the solution wasn't to find a key, but to realize that there is no lock? What if the path to freedom wasn't about adding more knowledge, more strategies, or more analysis, but about seeing, in a fundamentally different way? There is an ancient path that offers not answers, but a tool to dissolve the questions themselves. It comes from the tradition of Zen, and its most potent instrument is the koan. A koan is not a riddle to be solved, but a sword to cut through the chains of compulsive thought. Our guide on this journey will be a collection of these profound tools, a text known as the Gateless Gate. It is a map, left behind by those who have walked this path, a map that leads us to a gateway that has no gate, to a freedom that was here all along, waiting patiently behind the noise of our own minds. We begin our journey at the entrance, a place called the Gateless Gate. Let us pause on these words, for they hold the entire map within them. A gate implies a separation, a barrier between here and there. It suggests a wall, a boundary, and the promise of a different, perhaps better, place on the other side. Our lives are a constant search for such gates. We seek the gate that leads from anxiety to peace, from confusion to clarity, from lack to fulfillment. We believe that if we can just find the right key, perform the right action, or think the right thought, we can pass through this gate and finally arrive at our desired destination. This is the fundamental structure of our striving. It is the logic of our ambition and the engine of our discontent. But this gate, the one to which we are led by Zen, is gateless. It is a portal with no door, a threshold with no frame. This is the first, and perhaps most profound koan we must face. The paradox is a direct challenge to our most deeply held assumption, the assumption that peace is something to be achieved, that enlightenment is a place to be reached, that the self who is suffering now is separate from a future self who will be at peace. The term Gateless Gate tells us something radical. It tells us that there is no wall, there is no separation. The freedom you seek is not in another country. The peace you crave is not a prize to be won. The journey is not about building a bridge to a distant shore, but about realizing, with the whole of your being, that you have never left that shore. The only thing that suggests a separation, The only thing that constructs a gate where none exists is your own mind. The mind draws a chalk circle on the floor and then feels imprisoned within it. It imagines a barrier and then spends a lifetime trying to figure out how to break it down. This is the great work of the thinking mind. It creates problems and then appoints itself as the only one qualified to solve them. It tells a story of a flawed, incomplete me, and then promises to fix this me through effort and accumulation. But the story itself is the source of the suffering. The imagined gate is the prison. To understand this, we must turn to the very first case, the first great gate presented in the Mumonkan, the classic collection of koans. It is the story of the monk and the master Zhaozhou. In the world of Mahayana Buddhism, there is a foundational teaching, a doctrine as certain as the law of gravity, that all beings, without exception, possess Buddha nature. This is not a personality trait, but the intrinsic potential for awakening, the inherent capacity for wisdom and compassion that is the very ground of existence. It means that the dog sleeping in the sun, the bird singing on the branch, the stressed out person in the late night office, every single one has this luminous nature, often obscured, but never absent. It is a deeply reassuring and optimistic view of life. So, a monk, perhaps seeking this very reassurance, approached the great Zen master, Zhaozhou. He asked a question for which the answer seemed obvious, a question to confirm the doctrine he had so carefully learned. He asked, "Does a dog have Buddha nature or not?" He was expecting a simple, doctrinal yes. It would have been a satisfying answer, another piece of knowledge to add to his collection, another brick in the wall of his conceptual understanding of the universe. But Zhaozhou did not give him what he expected. He did not give him what he wanted. He looked at the monk, and from the depths of his realization, he uttered a single word, mu. In Chinese, mu can be translated as no, or not, or nothingness. It is a direct, stark, and brutal negation. In that single syllable, Zhaozhou swept away the entire landscape of the monk's understanding. He denied the most basic teaching. He threw a boulder onto the smooth path of the monk's intellectual progress. Why? Was Zhaozhou a heretic? Was he claiming that a new truth had been discovered, that dogs are uniquely excluded from the universal promise of enlightenment? To think this way is to miss the point entirely. Zhaozhou's answer was not a philosophical proposition. It was an act of compassion. It was a tool. The monk was not asking from a place of genuine inquiry. He was asking from his head. He was seeking confirmation, not transformation. He was polishing his concepts, not examining his own heart. Zhaozhou saw this. He saw that another yes would simply add another layer of dust to the monk's already obscured inner mirror. It would strengthen the very prison of concepts the monk was unknowingly trapped in. So, he offered mu. Mu is a gate slammed shut in the face of the logical mind. It is an answer that cannot be processed. It cannot be rationalized. If all beings have Buddha nature, how can this specific dog not have it? The mind spins. It searches for a loophole, an explanation, a way to make sense of the contradiction, but there is none. Mu is a sheer cliff face that the intellect cannot climb. It is a great fire that consumes every thought you throw into it. This is the gate, the experience of the mind coming to a dead stop. In that stopping, in that great doubt, something new has a chance to be born. When the endless chatter of "I know this" and "I understand" that is silenced by the deafening sound of mu, you are forced to abandon the intellect as your primary tool. You must investigate this mu with your entire being. What is this no? What is this nothingness? You must, as the old masters say, swallow it like a red-hot iron ball, which you can neither digest nor vomit out. It becomes the sole object of your attention. This is the function of the gateless gate. The gate is not an obstacle to be overcome on the outside. The gate is the very mechanism of your own seeking, conceptualizing mind. By presenting you with a paradox like mu, the master is not creating a barrier. He is revealing the barrier that is already there, the barrier of your own thinking. To pass through this gate, you cannot go around it or reason your way through it. You must walk directly into it. You must become the question itself. And here is how this ancient story speaks directly to the anxiety humming in your chest. Your anxious mind is no different from that monk. It is constantly asking questions, seeking reassurance. Am I good enough? Will my future be secure? Have I made the right choices? We are desperate for a yes. We believe a yes will finally allow us to relax. But even if we get it, the relief is temporary, because the questioning mind soon finds another doubt, another worry. Zhao Zhou's Mu teaches us a revolutionary truth. The problem is not the lack of a satisfying answer. The problem is the question itself, which arises from a fundamental sense of separation and lack. The koan does not answer our desperate questions. It compassionately and ruthlessly takes the questioner apart. So, this is the first gate on our path. It is the recognition that the walls of our prison are of our own making. They are made of our ideas, our beliefs, our desperate need for certainty. The great Mu is not a denial of our inherent worth or our Buddha nature. It is a denial of the mind's claim to know, to define, and to control reality. It is an invitation to let go of the map and to experience the territory directly. It is the first great tool placed in our hands, a key that does not unlock a door, but instead forces us to see that there was never a door to begin with. Now that we have been introduced to this gate, this wall of Mu that blocks the path of logic, we must look more closely at the tool itself. What is this strange device, the koan, that has the power to silence the mind and open the heart? We were left before a great wall called Mu, a single word from a master that brought the logical mind to a complete and sudden halt. This tool, this method of stopping the incessant flow of thought, is the heart of Zen practice. It is called a koan. To the Western mind, conditioned to see every problem as a puzzle to be solved, the koan appears as the ultimate riddle. It seems like a form of intellectual game, a test of cleverness set by a wise old master. But this is the first and most profound misunderstanding we must set aside. A koan is not a riddle. A riddle has a clever answer that, once revealed, satisfies the intellect. A koan is designed to frustrate the intellect until it collapses. A koan is not a philosophical problem. Philosophy invites debate, reason, and the construction of elaborate conceptual systems. A koan is a wrecking ball that smashes all conceptual systems. It is, in essence, a question that cannot be answered by thinking. To truly understand its function, we must turn to another of the great koans, one made famous by the formidable Zen master Hakuin, a man who revitalized the practice of koan study in Japan. Hakuin presented his students with this challenge: 2 hands clap, and there is a sound. Now, he would demand, what is the sound of 1 hand clapping? Sit with this question for a moment. Feel how your mind immediately goes to work. It races through possibilities, searching for a satisfactory answer. The first and most obvious response is silence. The sound of 1 hand is no sound. This seems logical, but the Zen master would reject it, perhaps with a sharp word or even a whack from his stick. Silence is the absence of sound. Hakuin asked you to show him a sound, not its absence. He is asking for a presence, not a void. So the mind tries again. It turns to poetry and metaphor. Perhaps the sound of one hand is the sound of the wind rustling through the pine trees. Perhaps it is the cry of a newborn baby. Perhaps it is the feeling of deep peace in meditation. These are beautiful sentiments, but they are not the answer. They are concepts, ideas about the sound. They are second-hand reports, memories, and associations. Hakuin did not ask for a description. He asked for the sound itself. The frustrated mind, now growing desperate, might retreat to the safety of science. It might declare, there can be no sound, because sound is a wave of pressure caused by vibrations. A single hand moving in the air does not create the necessary vibrations to be perceived as sound. This answer, so satisfying to our modern, rational worldview, would be met with the greatest disapproval of all. This is the ultimate retreat into the very prison of conceptual knowledge that the koan is designed to demolish. Every one of these attempts fails for the same reason. They all come from the thinking mind, the part of you that stands apart from the question, treating it like an object to be analyzed, labeled, and filed away. They maintain the separation between the subject, the me who is trying to solve the puzzle, and the object, the puzzle itself. But the koan is not an object. It is a living question, and it demands a living answer. It is a question to be entered into with the whole of your being. Its purpose is not to be solved, but to be dissolved in. The true function of a koan, like the sound of one hand, is to exhaust the problem solver. It is a sacred process of inducing failure. The mind, which thrives on its ability to figure things out, is given a task it cannot complete. It pushes and pushes against the unyielding wall of the question, and the master keeps sending it back, rejecting every clever answer, every intellectual trick. This process generates what is known as the great doubt. It is a state of profound not knowing. The student's entire worldview, built on the certainty of their own intellect, begins to crumble. This is not a pleasant experience. It is a crisis. It is the ego, the I who thinks, being brought to its knees, utterly defeated. And in that defeat, in that exhaustion, in that moment when the thinking mind finally gives up and lets go, a space is created. It is a space of profound silence, not the silence of absence, but a vibrant, alive silence. From this space of pure, direct awareness, a new kind of knowing can arise. It does not come in the form of a sentence or a concept. The true response to the koan is a direct presentation of this awakened state. It might be a gesture, it might be a cry, it might be a simple action that flows with absolute spontaneity from this place beyond thought. The student does not figure out the sound of one hand. The student becomes the sound of one hand. The separation between subject and object collapses. The question and the questioner merge into one reality. This is why the koan is such a powerful medicine for the modern soul. We live in a world that worships the analytical mind. We are drowning in information, data, opinions, and endless analysis. We are taught from birth that every problem has a solution, and that the way to find it is to think harder, to gather more information. This addiction to analysis is a primary source of our anxiety. Our minds are like overworked engines, constantly running, trying to calculate every variable, predict every outcome, and control the uncontrollable flow of life. The result is a state of perpetual tension, a friction between our rigid mental models and the fluid, paradoxical nature of reality. The koan is a radical detox for this overthinking mind. It introduces a completely different way of being, It teaches us to be comfortable in the state of not knowing. It demonstrates, through direct experience, that the most profound truths of existence are not found in books or lectures, but in the silent, direct experience of the present moment. The sound of one hand is not a secret to be discovered. It is the ever-present reality that is revealed when the noise of our two-handed thinking, the clapping of this against that, good against bad, me against you, finally ceases. It is the sound of reality itself, before we split it into pieces with our concepts. So the koan is not a clever trick. It is a tool of immense compassion. It is a surgical instrument designed to cut away the cataract of thought that clouds our vision. Its purpose is to systematically dismantle the intellectual scaffolding that we mistake for a home, but which is, in fact, a prison. By breaking the habit of relentless analysis, it allows us to rest in the world, rather than constantly trying to figure it out. It helps us to see that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Now that we understand the koan as a tool for breaking patterns, we must ask, what is the most fundamental pattern it seeks to break? It is the deepest and most persistent illusion of all, the belief in a solid, separate, and continuous self. It is this me that the koan ultimately takes aim at, the ghost in the machine that feels all the anxiety and all the suffering. If the koan is a tool for breaking the patterns that imprison us, we must now turn our attention to the master pattern, the one from which all others are born. It is the pattern of me. It is the persistent, convincing, and utterly exhausting story of a separate self. This is the ghost in the machine, the central character in the drama of our lives, the first and final source of all our anxiety. In the language of spirituality, this is often called the ego, but let us set aside any complex psychological definitions. The ego we are speaking of is simply the voice in the head. It is the narrator that never stops talking, the one who says, I like this, I hate that, I am a failure, I need to be better. It is a storyteller, and its greatest creation is its main character, you. This self, this me that we believe ourselves to be, is a fabrication. It is a beautiful and intricate construction, but a construction nonetheless. Think of it like a patchwork quilt, stitched together from thousands of disparate scraps. There are scraps of memory. I am the person who went to that school, who had that childhood. There are scraps of belief. I am a person who thinks this way about the world. There are scraps of roles and titles. I am a parent, a lawyer, a friend. There are scraps of sensation. I am this body, this face in the mirror. And there are scraps of fears and desires. I am the one who is terrified of public speaking and who dreams of a house by the sea. We take this patchwork quilt, this collage of thoughts, memories, and roles, and we wrap it around ourselves so tightly that we forget it is a garment. We come to believe that we are the quilt, and here is the source of our suffering. A fabricated self is an inherently insecure self. Because it is made of temporary, changing parts, it lives in a state of constant, low-grade fear. It must be defended at all times. When someone criticizes you, they are not just attacking an opinion, they are tearing at a piece of your quilt, threatening the integrity of your very identity. When you see someone else succeed, the story of their success can make your own story feel diminished, and so the poison of envy is born. The ego is perpetually lacking. It always needs one more pachon, more achievement, one more possession, one more compliment to feel complete. But it never can be, because it is not a real entity to begin with. It is a process, a ceaseless activity of self-maintenance. This project of defending and puffing up a fictional character is the very engine of anxiety. It is the background hum of tension that underlies modern life. Zen does not seek to destroy this ego. You need this functional self to remember your own name and to navigate daily life. The goal is far more subtle and profound. The goal is to see through it. And for this, we have one of the most beautiful and direct koans in the entire tradition. It comes from the sixth patriarch, Huineng, a pivotal figure in Zen history. The story is one of high drama. Huineng had received the transmission of the teaching and was fleeing for his life, pursued by monks who felt he was unworthy. The most determined of these was a former general named Mayo, who finally cornered Huineng on a mountain pass. Mayo was not there to harm Huineng, but to take the robe and bowl, the symbols of the patriarchy, which he felt belonged to another. Seeing him approach, Huineng placed the robe and bowl on a rock and said, "This robe is a symbol of faith. Is it something that can be taken by force?" He then hid himself. Mayo, a powerful man, tried to lift the robe, but it was as heavy as a mountain. He could not move it. Humbled and trembling, he called out, "I have come for the teaching, not for the robe. Please, show me." From his hiding place, Huineng spoke the words that would echo through centuries of Zen practice. He said, "Without thinking of good, without thinking of evil, at this very moment, what was your original face before your parents were born?" Let us dismantle this extraordinary question. It is a direct instruction for liberation. First, without thinking of good, without thinking of evil. This is the entry requirement. The mind that constructs the ego is a judging mind. It operates by splitting the world into pairs of opposites: good for me, bad for me, right, wrong, success, failure, like, dislike. This is the two-handed clapping of the conceptual mind. Huineng is demanding that this entire function be suspended. He is asking Mayo and us to let go of all judgment, all preference, all comparison. Next, at this very moment, this instruction anchors the inquiry directly in the here and now. The fabricated self lives almost exclusively in time. It is a creature of the past, built from memory, and a creature of the future, driven by hope and fear. It is almost never fully present. Huineng cuts through this timeline, demanding that you look not at your history or your destiny, but at the raw, immediate reality of this very moment. Finally, the stunning question itself. What was your original face before your parents were born? This is the blow that shatters the intellect. Your face is your true nature, your essence. But he asks you to find a face that existed before your parents, before your conception, before your body, before your story ever began. It is a logical impossibility, and that is precisely its power. It is not a question for the thinking mind to answer. It is a mirror held up to you. As you gaze into this koan, you are not meant to find an answer. You are meant to see what you are not. You are not your name. You are not your job. You are not your successes or your failures. You are not your body. You are not even your thoughts. All of these things came into being after your parents were born. The koan forces you to let go of every label, every story, every piece of the patchwork quilt you have identified with. What is left when all of that is gone? What remains is not a blank nothingness. What remains is a spacious, silent, and luminous awareness. It is the background of being, the screen on which the entire movie of your life is projected. Realizing this, even for an instant, is called seeing your original face. It is the moment you stop identifying with the character in the movie and realize you are the awareness watching it. The character might be suffering, anxious, and afraid, but the awareness that watches is untouched, unborn, and undying. It is inherently peaceful. This is the ultimate solution to the anxiety of the ego. When you see through the illusion of the separate self, the self-maintenance project can finally be put down. The energy that was once consumed by defending, comparing, and worrying is liberated. Peace is not something you gain. It is what is revealed when the frantic activity of the ego subsides. You don't have to destroy the character or stop the movie. You simply have to remember that it is not who you truly are. You can wear the patchwork quilt of your personality and your roles in the world lightly, knowing it is a temporary costume. Your original face, your true nature, remains serene and unstained, just as the open sky remains unstained by the clouds that drift through it. The ego thrives on judgment, on the constant division of the world into good and evil. So, if we are to find this original face, we must look deeper into this mechanism of division, this two-handed thinking that creates a world of conflict, both inside and out. To find our original face, we were told, we must first stop thinking of good and evil. We must suspend the judging mind. This instruction points directly at the fundamental operating system of the ego, dualism. Our mind, in its effort to make sense of a vast and chaotic world, learns to slice reality into pairs of opposites, good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure, pleasure and pain, me and you, us and them. This binary mode of thinking is useful for navigating practical matters, but when applied to the whole of life, it becomes the source of endless conflict. Our inner world becomes a battlefield. A part of us that wants to be productive wages war against a part that wants to rest. The part of us that feels generous is in conflict with the part that feels selfish. We are perpetually caught in the crossfire of our own judgments, and this internal war is a profound source of anxiety. We believe that peace will come when the good side finally wins. Zen proposes something far more radical. Peace comes when we see that the war itself is the illusion. To explore this, we must now face the most disturbing and controversial koan in the Zen tradition. It is a story that, on the surface, seems to violate the very foundation of Buddhist compassion. It is a story that many find repellent, and it is essential that we approach it not as a literal event to be condoned, but as a piece of profound, albeit shocking, spiritual theater. This is the story of Nansen and the cat. One day, in the monastery of Master Nansen, the monks of the eastern and western halls were arguing. The object of their dispute was a small cat. We do not know the details of their argument, only that it was heated and divisive. Perhaps they were arguing over who should feed it, or simply over who could claim it as their own. These men, who had dedicated their lives to the pursuit of enlightenment, were trapped in a petty squabble, their minds clouded by attachment and ego. Master Nansen, seeing this, walked into the hall. He picked up the cat in one hand and a sharp knife in the other. Holding them up for all to see, he addressed the assembly. "You monks," he said, "if any of you can say a true word of Zen, you will save this cat. If you cannot, I will cut it in two." A profound and terrible silence fell over the hall. The monks, moments before, so full of righteous opinions, were now struck dumb. Their minds raced, but they were paralyzed. They were caught in the very trap of dualism Nansen was exposing. To argue for saving the cat would be to affirm their attachment, to choose the good side, and thus remain within the framework of the conflict. To say nothing, or to agree with killing it, seemed monstrous. Trapped between these two poles, Unable to find a way out, they stood frozen. No one could offer a single, true word that could transcend the division. Seeing their failure, Nansen, true to his word, swiftly killed the cat. Let us pause here and acknowledge the horror of this image. The act is brutal and seems to fly in the face of the first Buddhist precept, to abstain from taking life. But to understand this koan, we must look through the literal act to the symbolic teaching. Nansen was not a cruel man. He was a master of great compassion, but his compassion was for the enlightenment of his students, and it was fierce. The monks were not just arguing about a cat. The cat had become a symbol for their own dualistic clinging, their own egoic attachments. Their minds were sick with the disease of mine and yours, right and wrong. Nansen's knife was not merely a physical blade. It was the sword of wisdom, the sword that cuts through illusion. In one swift, terrible motion, he cut not only the cat, but the root of the argument itself. He presented them with the consequence of their own dualistic thinking, showing them that their attachment and division, in a spiritual sense, leads to death. But the story is not yet over. That evening, Nansen's favorite disciple, the great Joshu, returned to the monastery. Nansen told him the story of the day's events and asked him, "What would you have done?" Joshu did not say a word. He simply bent down, removed his straw sandals, placed them on top of his head, and walked silently out of the room. Upon seeing this, Nansen sighed and said, "If only you had been here today, the cat would have been saved." Why was Joshu's bizarre act the true word that the other monks could not find? Because it was an act of perfect, unhesitating freedom. It was completely outside the logical framework of the problem. Putting dirty sandals, the lowest of things, upon one's head, the highest of things, is an act of sublime absurdity. It playfully demolishes all concepts of high and low, sacred and profane, right and wrong. It demonstrated a mind that was not trapped by convention, a mind that was not caught in the binary choice of save or kill. Joshu's action was a living demonstration of non-duality. It was a joke played on the universe, and in its humor and its freedom, it showed the way out of the trap. It was the one true word that could have dissolved the entire conflict. This strange and violent story holds a mirror up to our own anxious minds. We are the monks, arguing endlessly within ourselves. The good me that wants to exercise and eat well argues with the bad me that wants to be lazy and indulge. The me that feels compassionate argues with the me that feels resentful. We are torn apart by this internal strife, believing that one side must vanquish the other. We are paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. Nansen's lesson is that the desire to be right is the very source of the problem. Joshu's lesson is that true freedom lies in the ability to step outside of this conflict altogether, to act from a place of spontaneity and wholeness that is not bound by rigid categories of good and bad. This does not mean we become amoral. It means we cultivate a deeper intelligence, a wisdom that is not based on a checklist of rules, but on a compassionate and holistic understanding of the moment. It is the shift from a mind that judges to a mind that sees. When we can look at our own warring thoughts without taking a side, without identifying with either the good monk or the bad monk, we are performing Nansen's cut. We are severing the root of our own inner conflict. Compassion for ourselves and others is what flowers in this space beyond judgment. We see that everyone is struggling within their own dualistic traps, and our heart opens. When we stop dividing our world into worthy and unworthy, sacred and profane, we begin to perceive a different kind of reality. We start to see that the sacred is not confined to a temple or a special ceremony. It can be found in the most mundane, ordinary corners of our lives. if only we have the eyes to see it. When we cut through the world of good and bad, right and wrong, we are left with what is. We are left with the raw, unjudged reality of our lives. But what does it mean to practice with this reality? For the modern person, spirituality is often seen as an addition to an already busy life, or worse, an escape from it. It is the weekend retreat, the evening meditation class, the special book we read on vacation. It exists in a protected compartment, separate from the messy, demanding, and often mundane reality of our jobs, our families, and our chores. This creates a new, subtle form of dualism, the spiritual life versus the ordinary life. We feel that we are truly practicing only when we are on the meditation cushion, and that the rest of our time, the time spent in traffic, in meetings, or washing dishes, is somehow a distraction from the real path. The wisdom of Zen smashes this misconception with a gentle but profound force. It teaches that the monastery is not a building, but the world itself. The practice hall is wherever you happen to be, and the moment of enlightenment is not waiting for you in some future, idealized state, but is available right here, in the midst of your ordinary life. This is illustrated perfectly in one of the most beloved and essential koans, a simple conversation with the great master, Zhao. A monk had traveled a long way to study with the master. He was full of earnestness, his mind brimming with questions about the ultimate nature of reality. After settling in, he approached Zhao, bowed, and asked the question that was burning in his heart. "I have just entered this monastery," he said. "Master, please teach me, what is the essential point of Zen?" He was asking for the secret key, the ultimate truth, the philosophical cornerstone upon which the entire teaching rests. He was ready for a complex discourse, a profound and mysterious statement that he could contemplate for years. Zhao did not look up to the heavens or quote from an ancient scripture. He looked at the monk and asked a simple, practical question. "Have you eaten your morning rice porridge?" The monk, likely taken aback by the sheer ordinariness of the question, answered truthfully, "Yes, master, I have eaten." Zhao then looked at him, and with the full weight of his wisdom, delivered the great teaching the monk had traveled so far to hear. Then, Zhao said, "You had better wash your bowls." The records state that upon hearing these words, the monk had a profound awakening. He understood why. What is so earth-shattering about being told to do the dishes? To the logical mind, it sounds like a dismissal, as if Zhao was simply telling him, "Don't bother me now, go and finish your chores." But the monk understood that the instruction was the teaching. His mind was soaring in the clouds of abstraction, seeking a grand, spiritual idea called Zen. Zhao, with his simple question and command, immediately grounded him. He brought him crashing back down to the only reality that truly exists, the present moment and its immediate, undeniable requirements. Before enlightenment, before philosophy, before the essential point of Zen, there was a dirty bowl in the sink. The path to the ultimate begins with the immediate. Wash your bowls is the essence of mindfulness in action. It is a command to be fully present with the life that is right in front of you. When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. And when you wash your bowls, just wash your bowls. Feel the weight of the ceramic in your hands. Feel the warmth of the water on your skin. See the iridescent soap bubbles form and pop. Hear the gentle sound of the sponge against the surface. In these simple, direct sensory experiences, the kingdom of heaven is found. The mind that is fully engaged in the task of washing a bowl has no room left for anxious thoughts about the future or regretful thoughts about the past. It is not seeking something else. It is not rushing to get to the next thing. It is home. This koan is a powerful antidote to the fragmentation of modern life. Our existence is often a constant state of being somewhere else. When we are driving, we are composing emails in our head. When we are in a meeting, we are planning our weekend. When we are with our children, we are scrolling through our phones. We are never truly where we are. And this creates a deep sense of unease, a feeling of being constantly behind, of life slipping through our fingers. We treat ordinary tasks like washing the dishes as obstacles to be overcome as quickly as possible, so we can get to the good parts of life. The wisdom of wash your bowls tells us that washing the bowls is the good part. Answering the email is the good part. Sitting in traffic is the good part. Each moment, no matter its content, is the only moment you have. Each one is a golden opportunity to be fully alive. The monk was looking for an idea of enlightenment. Zhao showed him that enlightenment is not an idea at all. It is an action. It is a quality of attention. It is the intimate, non-judgmental participation in the seamless flow of reality. Life is a series of actions. You eat. When the eating is finished, the natural next step is to wash the bowl. When the bowl is clean, the next action will present itself. There is no need to search for some grand, spiritual task. The task is always right here. The peace we seek is not found by changing the circumstances of our lives, but by changing how we engage with the circumstances we already have. You do not need to quit your job and move to a mountain cave to find peace. You can find it at your kitchen sink. You can find it in the quiet focus you bring to a spreadsheet. You can find it in the simple act of listening, truly listening, to another person. So when your mind is filled with anxiety, when you feel overwhelmed by the complexity of your life, remember this koan. Stop. Look around you. What is the most simple, immediate task at hand? Is there a cup to be washed, a bed to be made, a single paragraph to be written? Let go of the larger story of your anxiety and bring the entirety of your attention to that one simple task. Pour all of your awareness into it. This is the practice. This is the way back to yourself. This is the essential point of Zen. When you bring this kind of total, focused attention to a simple, ordinary object bowl, a cup, a stone, you begin to see it in a new light. You see that it is not just a solid, separate thing. You begin to sense its interconnectedness to everything else, the web of causes and conditions that brought it into being. You are no longer just looking at a bowl. You are looking into the nature of reality itself. And this deep seeing leads us to the heart of Buddhist wisdom, the profound and liberating concept of emptiness. When we commit to the practice of washing our bowls, of bringing our full attention to the simple, ordinary objects of our lives, something remarkable begins to happen. We start to see them not just as inert, solid things, but as living processes. A simple ceramic bowl, when held with mindful attention, ceases to be just a bowl. It reveals itself as the earth from which the clay was dug, the water that gave it plasticity, the fire that gave it strength, and the hands and intention of the potter who gave it form. It is interconnected with the entire universe. To truly see the bowl is to see that it has no hard, separate, independent existence. This deep seeing leads us to one of the most central and most misunderstood concepts in all of Buddhism: emptiness. For the mind raised on Western logic, the word emptiness can sound terrifying. It suggests a cold, meaningless void, a nihilistic abyss where nothing matters. It sounds like a philosophy of despair, but this is a profound misunderstanding, a failure of translation. The Sanskrit word is shunyata, and it points not to nothingness, but to a reality so vibrant, so dynamic, and so full of potential that our rigid concepts cannot contain it. To grasp its true meaning, we must first empty our minds of our preconceived notions about it, as illustrated by a famous Zen story. A learned university professor, an expert in philosophy and religion, came to visit a wise old Zen master. He had read all the major scriptures and was eager to display his impressive understanding. Upon being welcomed into the master's humble hut, the professor began to speak. He spoke at length about the intricacies of Zen doctrine, about its history, its various schools of thought, and his own sophisticated interpretations. The master listened patiently, smiling gently, saying nothing. After some time, the master interrupted the professor's monologue and said, "It is a warm day. Let us have some tea." The master brought out a simple teapot and 2 cups. He placed a cup in front of the professor and began to pour. The dark tea filled the cup to the brim, but the master did not stop. He kept pouring. The tea overflowed, spilling onto the saucer, then dripping onto the simple wooden table, and finally, forming a small puddle on the floor. The professor watched this, at first with confusion and then with alarm. "Stop!" he finally shouted, unable to contain his agitation. "The cup is full. No more will go in." The master stopped pouring, looked at the professor, and said calmly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story provides the perfect entry point into the meaning of emptiness. On its most practical level, it is a lesson in humility. A mind that is already full, a mind convinced that it already knows, has no room to receive anything new. It is a closed system. This is a primary source of modern anxiety. We are all full cups, saturated with information, opinions, dogmas, and rigid beliefs about ourselves and the world. This makes us inflexible, defensive, and afraid of anything that challenges our certainty. The practice of emptying our cup is the practice of cultivating a beginner's mind, a state of open, curious awareness, ready to see the world as it is, not as we think it should be. But the teaching goes much deeper. Let us look at the cup again. Why is a cup useful? What is its primary function? It is useful precisely because it is empty. Its emptiness is its potential. Its emptiness is what allows it to hold tea, or water, or wine. If the cup were a solid block of porcelain, it would be useless as a cup. Its function is its emptiness. The same is true of a room. A room is useful not because of its walls, but because of the empty space between the walls, the space in which we can live and move. The hub of a wheel is useful because of the empty hole in the center that allows it to be placed on an axle. In this sense, emptiness is not a lack. It is pure, creative potentiality. It is the space in which all things can arise, exist, and cease. It is the womb of all creation. Now we arrive at the most profound layer of meaning. When Buddhism states that the cup is empty, it means it is empty of a separate, independent, permanent self. It lacks what is called an inherent self-nature. The cup's existence is entirely dependent on everything that is not the cup. As we saw earlier, it is the clay, the water, the fire, the potter. It is also the idea of a cup, the need for a vessel, the culture in which it exists. If you were to remove every single one of these non-cup elements, there would be no cup left over. The cup interis with the entire universe. It has no standalone reality. This is the truth of all phenomena, including ourselves. You too are empty in this way. You are empty of a solid, unchanging, independent me. The person you call yourself is a dynamic process, a confluence of countless causes and conditions. You are the food you have eaten, the air you are breathing, You are your parents and their parents. You are the books you have read, the conversations you have had, the kindness and the cruelty you have experienced. Take away all these non-you elements, and what is left? The realization of this profound interconnectedness is the realization of emptiness. It is not that you do not exist. It is that you do not exist in the way you think you do, as a separate, isolated entity. Understanding this has a revolutionary effect on anxiety. Anxiety is rooted in clinging and fear. We cling to our possessions, our status, our relationships, and our own bodies. And we live in fear of losing them. But when we see deeply that all these things are empty of a permanent, solid self, our desperate, white-knuckled grip begins to relax. We see that their nature is to be fluid, changing, and interconnected. We can still love them, use them, and care for them, but our happiness no longer depends on them remaining frozen in time. The fear of loss diminishes because we understand that nothing can truly be lost in an interconnected web of existence. It only changes form. This understanding fosters a deep resilience. A person who identifies rigidly with a single identity, I am a successful lawyeress, shattered when that identity is threatened. But a person who understands their own emptiness knows they are more than any single label. They are like an empty cup, possessing the capacity to hold new things, to become something else. Their emptiness is their freedom. Finally, this insight is the very soil from which true compassion grows. When the hard line between me and you dissolves, we see that your well-being is inseparable from my well-being. We are waves in the same ocean. This recognition makes it impossible not to care. Emptiness, then, is not a bleak void. It is a warm, vibrant, and dynamic reality. It is the dance of universal interconnectedness. It is the liberating truth that nothing is fixed, nothing is isolated. Everything is in a constant, creative state of becoming. To truly understand this dynamic, flowing nature of reality is to prepare ourselves to face its most personal and challenging manifestation, the universal truth of impermanence. The realization of emptiness reveals a universe that is not made of solid, separate things, but is a single, dynamic, and interconnected flow. Everything is with everything else. The personal, moment-to-moment experience of this universal flow is what the Buddha called anicca, or impermanence. This is perhaps the most obvious, yet most fiercely resisted, truth of our existence. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Our bodies age. Our thoughts and feelings shift like the weather. Relationships evolve. Seasons turn. Empires rise and fall. The entire cosmos is a relentless dance of arising and passing away. We know this to be true, and yet we spend the vast majority of our lives pretending it is not so. This denial is a primary source of our anxiety. Our suffering is not caused by the fact of impermanence itself, but by our desperate clinging to the fantasy of permanence. We build our homes on shifting sands, and then feel shocked and betrayed when the ground moves beneath our feet. We fall in love with a beautiful, vibrant flower, and then suffer when it inevitably wilts. We grasp at moments of happiness, trying to freeze them in time, and feel a deep sense of loss when they pass. We identify with our youth, our strength, and our health, and then feel a profound sense of dread as they naturally decline. Our life becomes a frantic, exhausting struggle against the fundamental nature of reality. We are trying to hold back the tide with our bare hands, and the strain of this impossible effort is the very tension we call anxiety. There is no story that illustrates this truth more poignantly than that of a young woman named Kisa Gautami. She was a new mother, and her entire world revolved around her infant son. One day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gautami was consumed by a grief so absolute, it shattered her sanity. She refused to believe her son was gone. Clasping the small, still body to her chest, she wandered through her village, going from door to door, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her profound suffering, directed her to the one person he thought might have a cure. He told her to go and see the Buddha. Kisa Gautami ran to the place where the Buddha was teaching. She laid the body of her son at his feet and pleaded with him, "Master, they say you are the great physician. Give me the medicine that will cure my boy." The Buddha looked at her with boundless compassion. He did not dismiss her or lecture her on the finality of death. He met her where she was, in her desperate hope. "I can make such a medicine for you," he said gently, "but to do so, I require one special ingredient. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one knows, a parent, a child, a spouse, or a Cervantes ever died." Filled with a surge of hope, Kisa Gautami rushed back to the village. She went to the first house and knocked on the door. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son. Can you give me one?" "Of course," the woman at the door replied, and went to fetch it. As she returned, Kisa Gautami asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, lady," she said, "you remind me of my deepest sorrow. My husband died only last year." Kisa Gautami respectfully declined the seed and went to the next house. The family was happy to give her a mustard seed, but when she asked her question, they told her of the parent they had lost. She went to a third house and a fourth, and on through the entire village. The story was the same at every door. Every family had mustard seeds, and every family had known loss. One had lost a sister, another a daughter, another a beloved grandparent. As the sun began to set, the truth of her search began to dawn on Kisa Gautami. Her sorrow was not hers alone. Death was not a unique tragedy that had befallen only her. It was the universal, shared condition of all beings. In every home, there was an empty chair. In every heart, there was a scar of loss. Her personal, isolating grief began to dissolve into a vast, shared, universal sorrow. And in that shared sorrow, she found a strange and profound peace. She understood what the Buddha had done. He had sent her on a journey, not to find a magical seed, but to find the truth. The medicine he gave her was not for her son, but for her. It was the healing medicine of acceptance. She took the body of her son to the cremation ground, and as she watched the flames, she did so with a heart that was no longer fighting against reality, but was at peace with its solemn, heartbreaking beauty. This story teaches us that contemplating impermanence is not a morbid or pessimistic act. It is an act of liberation. It frees us from the exhausting struggle against the inevitable. And it does something more. It makes every moment of our lives infinitely precious. When we truly, deeply understand that our time here is fleeting, that our health is not guaranteed, that our loved ones will not be with us forever, we stop taking them for granted. We begin to cherish the simple, ordinary moments: a shared meal, a quiet conversation, a walk in the evening sunas, the sacred and precious gifts they are. Acknowledging impermanence is the gateway to profound gratitude. Furthermore, This truth applies not just to the outer world, but to our inner world as well. Our thoughts and feelings are the most impermanent phenomena of all. When we are in the grip of a powerful wave of anxiety, it feels solid, permanent, and all-encompassing. It feels like me. But if we can learn to simply observe it without fighting it, we will see that it, too, is a passing cloud. It arises due to certain conditions. It stays for a while, and, if we let it be, it will naturally dissipate. Knowing this changes our relationship with our own minds. We no longer need to be terrified of our own feelings. We can learn to allow them to come and go, like weather passing through the vast, open sky of our awareness. Finally, impermanence is not just about loss and decay. It is the very engine of life and growth. If things were permanent, a seed could never become a flower. A wound could never heal. A child could never grow. A mistake could never be corrected. The possibility of change, of transformation, of healing all of it, depends on the law of impermanence. It is what allows an anxious person to find peace, a grieving person to find solace, and a confused person to find wisdom. It is the signature of life itself. The acceptance of this flowing, changing reality frees us from the war against time, and it naturally focuses our attention on the only place where life can actually be lived, this very moment. The acceptance of impermanence, the realization that the past is a ghost and the future is a dream, funnels our entire existence into a single point of power and reality, the present moment. Yet, for the mind afflicted with anxiety, this present moment is the one place it rarely wants to be. The anxious mind is a compulsive time traveler. It lives in the land of elsewhere. It journeys back to the past to endlessly edit and regret conversations, to replay perceived failures, and to bathe in the bittersweet waters of nostalgia. Or, more often, it rockets into the future, a realm of pure speculation, where it games out catastrophic what-if scenarios, rehearses for confrontations that will never happen, and worries about 1,000 imagined disasters. This constant shuttling between a dead past and an unborn future is utterly exhausting, and it is the source of that profound feeling that our life is somehow passing us by, that we are spectators to our own existence. The core teaching of Zen, and indeed of all deep contemplative traditions, is that this is a tragic mistake. The present moment is not just the most important time, it is the only time there is. Life does not happen in the past or the future. It unfolds, breath by breath, only in the continuous, ever-emerging now. All of our power, all of our creativity, all of our capacity for joy, love, and peace resides exclusively in this present moment. To be absent from the now is, in the most literal sense, to be absent from your life. The practice, then, is a training in homecoming. It is the art of returning, again and again, to the only place where life can be found. The journey of returning to the present is beautifully charted in a famous saying by the Zen master Qingyuan Weichin. He described his path in 3 distinct stages. Before I studied Zen, he said, I saw mountains as mountains and rivers as rivers. This is the first stage, the stage of ordinary, naive perception. It is the world of the child. A mountain is a big, rocky thing you can climb. A river is a body of water that flows. There is no deep analysis, no philosophical overlay. There is a simple, direct, and uncomplicated relationship with reality. Things are simply what they are. Then, Qingyuan said, when I began to study Zen and gained a more intimate knowledge, I came to the point where I saw that mountains are not mountains and rivers are not rivers. This is the second stage, the stage of intellectual deconstruction. This is the world of the seeker, the philosopher. We learn the concepts we have been exploring. We learn about emptiness. We learn that a mountain is not a solid, independent entity, but a dynamic process, a temporary collection of rock, soil, and trees, all interconnected and impermanent. We understand that the very idea of mountain is a mental concept, a label we project onto reality. The mountain is empty of any inherent mountainness. This stage is crucial. It breaks down our rigid, simplistic views of the world. But it can also be a trap. It can be a cold, alienating place where reality becomes nothing more than a set of abstract theories. The simple intimacy of the first stage is lost. But the journey does not end there. Finally, Qingyuan says, "But now that I have gotten its very substance, I am at rest, for I see mountains once again as mountains, and rivers once again as rivers." This is the third stage, the stage of homecoming, of enlightened perception. On the surface, it sounds identical to the first stage, but the inner reality is worlds apart. This is not a regression to ignorance. It is the wisdom of the second stage, fully absorbed and then transcended. To see the mountain as a mountain, once again, is to see it with the eyes of one who knows it is empty, knows it is impermanent, knows it is a concept, and yet loves it and experiences it directly as a mountain in all its magnificent, thundering suchness. The analytical mind, the mind that deconstructed the mountain into a set of concepts, has become quiet. The separation between the observer and the observed dissolves. There is no longer a me looking at a mountain. There is simply mountaining. It is a direct, non-conceptual, and profoundly intimate encounter with the present moment. The isness of the mountain is total and complete. This is what it means to be fully present. It is to experience the world without the constant filter of our thoughts, judgments, and theories. How do we practice this? How do we get to this third stage of seeing? The primary anchor is the body, and specifically, the breath. Your thinking mind can be anywhere in time, but your breath is always happening now. Your body is always in the present moment. By consciously placing your attention on the physical sensation of the breath, entering and leaving your body, you gently but firmly pull the wandering mind out of the past and future and anchor it in the here and now. The same can be done with any physical sensation. The feeling of your feet planted firmly on the floor, the warmth of a cup in your hands, the sound of rain against the window pane. These are all portals out of the dream world of thought and into the reality of the present. This is also the deeper function of the koan. A koan like Mu cannot be answered by ruminating on the past or speculating about the future. It demands your total, present moment resources. It starves the time-traveling, anxious mind of its fuel, forcing it to confront the reality that is right here. When you can rest in the present moment, even for a few seconds, you discover it is a profound refuge from anxiety. Anxiety is a story about the future, but in this present moment, as you feel your breath move in and out, are you safe? Is the catastrophe happening right now? Almost always, the answer is no. In the reality of the now, you are okay. This doesn't mean we ignore problems or pretend they don't exist. It means we approach them from a place of grounded presence rather than panicked projection. The clarity, creativity, and strength needed to handle life's challenges are only available in the now. You cannot act in the past or the future. You can only act from the platform of this present moment. Returning to this platform, to the reality of the mountain as a mountain, is the great work. It is the path to peace. But being present in this way is not a lazy or passive state. It is not about spacing out. It requires a unique quality of attention, a vibrant stillness, a relaxed alertness. It demands a very particular kind of discipline, a paradoxical form of effort that is both fully engaged and completely at rest. We have arrived at the understanding that peace is found in the present moment. The logical, immediate question that follows is, so, how do I try to stay in the present moment? And in that single, natural question, we stumble upon one of the most profound and frustrating paradoxes of the spiritual path. The very act of trying, the application of forceful, grasping effort, is often the very thing that pushes peace further away. Anyone who has ever tried to meditate has experienced this. You sit down with the firm intention to have a quiet mind. You try to force the thoughts to stop, and in response, your mind erupts into a chaotic carnival of noise, louder and more insistent than ever before. You try to force yourself to feel calm, and instead, you feel a rising tide of frustration and a sense of failure. This experience runs contrary to everything our culture has taught us about achievement. We are raised in a world that glorifies striving. We are taught that success is the direct result of willpower, of pushing through resistance, of applying more force and more effort. It is the logic of the athlete pushing through pain, the entrepreneur working through the night. No pain, no gain is the mantra. This model is effective for building a business or conquering a physical challenge. But when this same mentality of forceful, aggressive effort is turned inward, it becomes a catastrophe. It creates more tension, not less. It reinforces the internal battle, strengthening the very ego that believes it can and must control everything. Trying to wrestle your own mind into submission is like trying to flatten ripples in a pond by pressing down on them with your hand. You only create more disturbance. To find a way out of this trap, we can look to the ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei. Though it comes from a different tradition, its essence is the heartbeat of Zen practice. Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing or non-action, but this is misleading. It does not mean passivity, laziness, or resignation. Wu Wei is the art of effortless effort. It is action that arises in harmony with the natural flow of life, rather than in opposition to it. Imagine you are in a boat on a river. You could try to row upstream, fighting the current with all your might, sweating and straining. This is forceful effort. Or you could use your intelligence and skill to simply guide the boat, using a paddle as a rudder, letting the natural current carry you where you need to go. This is Wu Wei. You are still active, alert, and engaged, but you are not at war with the river. You are in partnership with it. There is a timeless Taoist parable that illustrates the folly of forceful effort in natural processes. It tells of an impatient farmer from the state of Song. He was deeply worried that his precious rice seedlings were not growing fast enough. He would go out to his field every day, fretting over their slow progress. One day, he decided he had to do something to help them along. He spent the entire day in the hot sun, painstakingly going from seedling to seedling, gently pulling each one up just a little bit. He returned home in the evening, exhausted but triumphant. "I am so tired," he told his family, "but I have helped the rice to grow today." His son, alarmed, ran out to the field to see. He found that every single seedling had withered and died. This story is a perfect metaphor for the spiritual path. Our inner peace, our clarity, our wisdom, these are the rice seedlings. We cannot force them to grow. We cannot pull on them to make them arrive faster. The very act of trying, of impatiently demanding results. Am I peaceful yet? Am I enlightened yet? Is the act of pulling on the seedlings. It kills the very process we wish to cultivate. The practice of Wu Wei is the practice of the wise farmer. We do not pull on the plants. We simply create the right conditions. We ensure the soil is fertile. We provide water and sunlight. In spiritual terms, this means we show up. We create the space for practice. We sit down to meditate. We set a gentle intention to be present. And then we let go. We allow the natural process to unfold in its own time, without demanding a specific outcome. What does this effortless effort look like in practice, especially when faced with a difficult thought or emotion like anxiety? It is a middle way between two extremes. One extreme is to be completely consumed by the anxiety, identifying with it and letting it carry you away. The other extreme is to fight it, to try to suppress it or push it out of your mind. Wu Wei offers a third option. You simply observe the anxiety. You allow it to be there, in the space of your awareness, without judgment. You feel the physical sensations of it in your body, the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach without adding a story to them. You watch the anxious thoughts arise and pass like clouds in the sky. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to fight them. You don't serve them tea, but you also don't shoot at them. You simply let them be. And in doing so, you rob them of their power over you. The moment you cease the inner struggle is the moment that peace has a chance to emerge. This peace is not something you have achieved or won. It is a peace that was there all along, buried underneath the noise of your inner war. It arises as a byproduct of surrender. It is the quiet that descends upon a battlefield after the two warring armies have finally laid down their arms, not because one has vanquished the other, but because they have both recognized the futility of the fight. This does not mean we abandon discipline. It takes discipline to create the conditions for the rice to grow. It takes effort to remember to be present, to bring the mind back when it wanders for the 100th time. But the quality of this effort is crucial. It is not the aggressive, self-critical effort of a tyrant demanding obedience. It is the gentle, patient, and compassionate effort of a gardener tending to their beloved plants. It is the consistent, steady presence of someone who trusts the process of growth. This principle of Wu Wei, of learning to act in harmony with a deeper flow, requires a profound letting go. It is a letting go of our ego's desperate need to control every outcome. And to be truly free, we must be willing to apply this principle of letting go to everything, even to our most cherished spiritual ideas and tools. We must be willing to release our grip on the very raft that has carried us across the river, lest it become our next burden. The principle of Wu Wei, of effortless effort, teaches us to let go of our desperate struggle and trust in a deeper, more natural flow. This requires a profound act of surrender, a release of the ego's need to control every outcome. This principle must be applied not only to our efforts, but to the very tools and concepts we use on the spiritual path itself. There is a great danger in any spiritual pursuit, a subtle trap that the ego is brilliant at setting for itself. It is the danger of turning the path of liberation into a new, more refined form of bondage. It is the risk of taking the raft that was meant to carry us across the river of suffering and, upon reaching the other shore, hoisting it onto our backs and carrying it as our new, sacred burden. This is the trap of spiritual materialism. The ego, which loves to acquire and identify, simply shifts its focus. Instead of collecting cars and titles, it begins to collect spiritual experiences, concepts, and identities. I am a Buddhist. I am a meditator. I understand emptiness. I have had a profound insight. The ideas and practices that were meant to be tools for dismantling the self are instead used to build a new, more elaborate, spiritual self. We become attached to the teachings, to the rituals, to the images, and in doing so, we miss the entire point. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. A menu is not the meal. And a statue of the Buddha is not the Buddha. To shatter this most subtle and dangerous form of attachment, Zen offers us one of its most iconoclastic and shocking stories. It is the koan of the master Danxia and his fire. The story takes place on a bitterly cold winter day. Danxia, a traveling Zen master, was staying at a temple. Shivering from the cold that seeped into his very bones, he saw that the temple's hearth was empty. He looked around the main hall, his eyes falling upon the ornate, beautifully carved wooden statues of the enlightened ones. With no hesitation, he took one of the statues of the Buddha and with an axe chopped it into pieces. He then used the pieces to start a roaring fire in the hearth and sat before it, warming his hands. The keeper of the temple, hearing the commotion, rushed into the hall. When he saw what Danxia had done, the sacred image of the Blessed One being consumed by flames, was overcome with horror and rage. "What are you doing?" he shrieked, his voice trembling. "Have you gone mad? That is a statue of the Buddha. This is sacrilege." Danxia did not seem perturbed. He calmly took a stick and began poking through the ashes of the fire. The apoplectic temple keeper, bewildered, asked him what on earth he was searching for. "I am looking for the Sharira," Danxia replied plainly. Sharira are the sacred, pearl-like relics that are sometimes said to be found in the cremation ashes of a fully enlightened being. This response pushed the temple keeper beyond the limits of his patience. "You fool," he yelled. "How can you possibly expect to find sacred relics in a common piece of wood?" Danxia stopped poking the fire. He looked up, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Ah," he said softly. "So, if it's just a common piece of wood, would you mind if I had the other two statues for my fire as well?" The koan says that upon hearing this, the temple keeper's mind shattered, and he was awakened. This radical act, which seems like the height of nihilism and disrespect, is in fact an act of the deepest compassion. Danxia was not disrespecting the Buddha. He was revealing the true Buddha by destroying the false one. The temple keeper was worshipping a piece of wood. He had confused the symbol with the reality. His faith was placed in an external object, a form, a concept. He believed the Buddha was out there, in that statue. Danxia's shocking action was a precise and powerful lesson designed to destroy this fundamental misunderstanding. His search for relics in the ashes was a brilliant, compassionate trap. By forcing the keeper to admit that a wooden statue could not possibly contain sacred relics, he forced him to confront the truth. He was worshipping wood. Danxia's final question: "If it's just wood, can I burn the others?" sealed the lesson. It exposed the keeper's own contradictory mind. Why was this piece of wood sacred, but other pieces of wood were not? The keeper was trapped by his own conceptual distinctions. The profound teaching is this: the true Buddha is not made of wood or stone or gold. The true Buddha is not found in a temple, in a book, or in a ritual. The true, living Buddha is the innate potential for wisdom, clarity, and compassion that lies within your own mind at this very moment. To bow to an external statue while ignoring the living, breathing Buddha nature within you is the real sacrilege. Danxia was cold. The reality of his physical suffering was immediate and true. The sacredness of the statue was a concept. He chose the living reality over the dead idea. This story is the ultimate expression of the famous Zen saying, If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. This does not, of course, advocate violence. The Buddha on the road is any external image, teacher, or concept that you are about to turn into a crutch, an idol, a new authority to place between yourself and your own direct experience. It means that if your idea of Buddha or enlightenment becomes a fixed concept that you are worshipping, you must kill that concept in your own mind to be free. We are all, in our own ways, that temple keeper. We build shrines to our own idols. They may not be wooden statues. Our idol might be our career. It might be a political ideology. It might be our reputation, our wealth, or our own self-image as a good person. We cling to these concepts. We defend them fiercely, and we suffer deeply when the fire of reality inevitably comes to burn them. Danxia's fire is a radical invitation to examine our own lives. What are the sacred cows in our own minds? What concepts are we worshipping that prevent us from seeing the world as it is? What ideas about ourselves are we so attached to that we are afraid to let them go, even when they cause us to freeze in the cold? When we find the courage to let our own conceptual idols burn, we are left in a state of profound openness. When we stop looking for a Buddha out there, we are forced to finally turn our attention inward. When we understand that all teachings are rafts to be left behind, we are faced with a liberating and perhaps unnerving question. If there is no external savior to pray to, no sacred text with all the answers, no ultimate concept to grasp, then what is the purpose of all this striving? This leads us to the heart of freedom itself, the realization that perhaps there was never anything to gain in the first place. After we have let the fire of wisdom consume our most sacred idols, after we have seen that even the concept of Buddha can become a prison, we are left standing in a profound and perhaps unsettling emptiness. Our hands are open. There is nothing left to cling to. For a mind conditioned by our modern world, this is a terrifying state. Our entire culture is built upon a single, unquestioned premise, that happiness is the result of acquisition. We are driven by the gaining mind. From our earliest days, we are taught to accumulate. We must get good grades, to get into a good college, to get a good job, to get a nice house, to get a promotion, to get more security, to get more respect. Life is presented as a relentless process of addition. We believe that if we can just acquire the right combination of possessions, experiences, and achievements, we will finally arrive at a state of lasting satisfaction. It is no surprise, then, that when we turn toward a spiritual path, we bring this same consumer mindset with us. We apply the logic of the marketplace to the landscape of the soul. We want to attain enlightenment. We want to acquire peace. We want to achieve a higher state of consciousness. We shop for the right teacher, the right technique, the right mantra, hoping that one of these will be the final, magical object that we can add to our collection that will make us whole. This spiritual seeking, driven by the gaining mind, becomes just another source of anxiety. Am I doing it right? Is this the fastest path? Why haven't I gotten it yet, when others seem to have? Into this frantic marketplace of the soul, the wisdom of Zen drops a statement of such radical simplicity that it shatters the entire enterprise. It is a central message of texts like the Heart Sutra, and it can be summarized in a simple, liberating phrase: no attainment with nothing to attain. This is not a philosophy of nihilistic despair. It is the most joyful and liberating news a seeker can ever hear. It is a declaration of freedom from the exhausting, never-ending treadmill of becoming. It tells us that the entire search is based on a false premise. The living embodiment of this principle is a man named Mumonkan, a wealthy and respected householder who lived in 8th century China. He, along with his wife and daughter, became deeply enlightened not by renouncing the world for a monastery, but by waking up within it. At the height of his material success, Mumonkan came to a profound realization. He saw that his vast fortune, his gold, his silver, his precious jewels was not a source of happiness, but a source of burden. It was a source of worry, of attachment, and of potential strife. He decided he had to be free of it. So, he loaded all of his worldly wealth onto a boat, rowed it to the middle of a deep river, and unceremoniously dumped the entire treasure into the water. A person on the riverbank, seeing this astonishing act, cried out, "Why don't you give it to the poor? You could have gained great merit." Mumonkan's response cut to the very heart of this teaching. He understood that wealth itself, the very craving for it, and attachment to it, was a kind of poison to the mind. To simply give it to others would be to pass the poison along, to feed the cycle of greed and desire. His act was not about trying to gain something, not even spiritual merit. It was an act of pure renunciation, of letting go. He simply wanted to be unburdened. By emptying his hands of what the world considers wealth, he and his family discovered a far greater treasure, the unburdened mind, the richness of utter simplicity. They understood that true freedom comes not from what you gain, but from what you are willing to lose. This is the essence of no attainment. Enlightenment is not an additive process. It is a subtractive one. Imagine a magnificent golden statue that has been buried in the ground for 1,000 years. Over the centuries, it has become caked with layers of mud, clay, and rock. A person who finds it does not need to create a golden statue. The statue is already there, perfect and complete. Their work is simply to patiently and carefully wash away the layers of dirt that obscure it. Our practice is this process of washing. The golden statue is our true nature, our original face, which is already luminous, perfect, and peaceful. The layers of mud are our ignorance, our greed, our judgments, our fears, and our mistaken belief in a separate, needy self. We do not need to attain a peaceful nature. We only need to cease obscuring the one we already have. This reframes our entire understanding of the path. The gaining mind sees peace as a destination, a reward at the end of a long and difficult journey. This turns the journey itself into a period of striving and discontent. But the principle of no attainment reveals that peace is the path. When you walk without the frantic need to arrive somewhere else, when your every step is one of simple, mindful presence, then that step is the destination. Peace is not waiting for you at the end of the road. It is available in the quality of your attention as you walk it. This frees us from the terrible tyranny of self-improvement. The self-improvement project, for all its good intentions, is often rooted in the belief that I am not good enough as I am. It is a constant source of anxiety, a never-ending report card on which we are always falling short. The teaching of no attainment is an act of profound self-acceptance. It tells us that our basic nature is already whole and complete. We don't need to be fixed. We don't need to add a single thing to who we are. We simply need to stop believing the story that we are inadequate. When we let go of the goal of attaining something in the future, we are left with the reality of the present. But what about the suffering that is here in the present? What about the very real anxiety, sadness, and fear that we experience? If we are no longer trying to escape them or replace them with a future state of peace, what is our relationship to them now? If we are no longer trying to get rid of the mud, what are we to do with it? The answer is as radical and counterintuitive as no attainment. We must turn toward the mud and see it not as an obstacle, but as the very soil from which our liberation can grow. When we accept the truth of no attainment, when we finally put down the heavy burden of trying to become something other than what we are left with a profound question. What, then, do we do with the suffering that is here right now? What is our relationship to the anxiety, the fear, the anger, and the sadness that visit us? Our entire life has been a project of trying to eliminate these feelings, to escape them, to conquer them, or to replace them with a future, idealized state of peace. If we abandon that project, what is left? Are we simply to be passive victims of our own inner turmoil? The answer offered by Zen is a radical and courageous reversal of our lifelong strategy. Instead of running from our suffering, we are invited to turn towards it. Instead of treating our difficult emotions as enemies to be vanquished, we are taught to see them as raw material, as the very soil from which our wisdom and freedom can grow. This is the great teaching of the lotus flower. The lotus is a symbol of purity and enlightenment across the East. It is a flower of exquisite, immaculate beauty, rising up on a slender stem. But the most profound truth of the lotus is where it grows. It does not grow in a pristine, manicured garden. It does not grow on a high, clean mountaintop. The lotus flower grows only in murky, stagnant, muddy water. Without the mud, there can be no lotus. This is one of the most hopeful and essential teachings for anyone who suffers. The mud of your life, your anxiety, your grief, your failures, your confusions, the very nutrient base from which your lotus of understanding can bloom. Our typical response to the mud of our emotions is one of two things: suppression or distraction. When anxiety arises, we try to push it down, to pretend it isn't there, to put on a brave face. Or we immediately seek distraction. We turn on the television, scroll through our phones, eat when we are not hungry, or throw ourselves into work. We do anything to avoid the discomfort of simply being with the feeling. Both of these strategies are forms of running away, and both ultimately fail. The suppressed emotion festers and grows stronger in the dark. The distracted emotion simply waits patiently for us to put down our phone and then returns, often with greater intensity. The Zen approach, as taught with beautiful clarity by the master Thich Nhat Hanh, is to practice the art of turning towards. He invites us to see a strong, difficult emotion as a crying baby. Imagine you are at home, and in the next room, your baby begins to cry. If you were to lock the door, turn up the music, and try to ignore it, we would not call that compassionate. It would only make the baby feel abandoned and cry louder. Yet, this is precisely how we treat ourselves. Our anxiety begins to cry within us, and we lock it in a room, in our mind, and try to drown it out. The practice of mindfulness is the practice of being a loving parent to ourselves. When the mother hears the baby crying, her first action is simply to stop what she is doing and go to the baby. She doesn't immediately have to know why the baby is crying. Her first job is not to analyze the problem. Her first job is to offer her presence. She gently picks up the baby and holds it in her arms. She embraces it. In that embrace, she transmits her warmth, her care, her tenderness. Her calm presence begins to soothe the baby. We can practice this with our own anxiety. When you feel that familiar knot in your stomach, that racing in your chest, the first step is to recognize it. You can say to yourself, "Hello, my anxiety, I know you are there. I will take care of you." You stop running. The second step is to embrace it. You use your breath as your loving arms. You breathe in and you are aware of the feeling of anxiety in you. You breathe out, and you gently smile to it. You are not trying to make it go away. You are not fighting it. You are simply holding it with the gentle, non-judgmental energy of your mindful attention. You are being a mother to your own pain. The third step is to soothe. Miraculously, the simple act of holding a feeling with this quality of attention already begins to calm it down. The baby, feeling the warmth and safety of its mother's embrace, begins to cry less. Your anxiety, no longer being fought or ignored, no longer has to scream for your attention. It feels seen, acknowledged, and held, and its frantic energy begins to subside. Only after these first 3 steps does the 4th step become possible, looking deeply. When the baby has calmed a little, the mother can then look to see what is wrong. Is the baby hungry? Is it cold? Is there a pin pricking its skin? Similarly, once our emotion has been soothed by our presence, we can begin to ask it, with gentleness, "My dear anxiety, why are you here today? What are you trying to tell me? What do you need?" This changes our entire relationship with our inner life. Our emotions are no longer enemies. They are messengers, often carrying vital information for our well-being. Anxiety may be a messenger telling us that we are living a life that is out of alignment with our deepest values. It may be telling us that we have a deep, unmet need for connection or security. Anger is often a messenger of justice, telling us that a boundary has been crossed, either for ourselves or for others. Sadness is a messenger that tells us we have loved deeply. If we learn to listen to these messengers instead of shooting them, they become our greatest teachers. This is a kind of spiritual alchemy. We take the raw, difficult, and often painful energy of the mud, and, by mixing it with the light of our mindful awareness, we transform it. We don't eliminate the energy, we transmute it. The chaotic energy of fear, when held with compassion, can be transformed into the energy of carefulness and wise protection. The fiery energy of anger can be transformed into the passionate energy to create positive change. The deep sorrow of grief can be transformed into a profound capacity for love and connection with all who suffer. This is how the lotus blooms from the mud. It does not reject the mud. It uses the mud as its very life force. To walk this path, to find the courage to turn towards our own pain and hold it with tenderness, requires the cultivation of one essential human quality. It is a quality that must be the foundation of this entire practice of transformation. It is the ability to be a gentle, loving parent to ourselves, especially when we are suffering. This quality is compassion, to turn towards our own suffering, to hold our anxiety and fear like a mother holds a crying child, requires a foundational quality, an energy that is both the path and the destination. This energy is compassion, known in the Buddhist tradition as karuna. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, and the sincere wish for that suffering to be eased. Often, we think of compassion as something we extend outwards, towards others, but for most of us, the most difficult and most necessary direction for compassion is inward. The practice of self-compassion is the medicine that makes the entire journey of healing possible. For many of us, the most relentless source of our anxiety is not an external threat, but the voice of our own inner critic. There is a narrator in our minds that is a merciless judge. It keeps a detailed record of every mistake we have ever made. It magnifies our flaws and weaknesses, while dismissing our strengths and accomplishments. It constantly compares us to others, always finding us lacking. We would never dream of speaking to a friend, or even a stranger, with the harsh, unforgiving, and often cruel language that we reserve for ourselves. This inner voice is the source of so much shame, guilt, and feelings of inadequacy. It is the engine that drives the belief that we are somehow broken and in need of constant fixing. To heal, we must learn to cultivate a different inner voice. This is the voice of self-compassion. It is crucial to understand what self-compassion is not. It is not self-pity. Self-pity gets lost in a story of poor me, reinforcing a sense of victimhood. Self-compassion acknowledges the pain without becoming entangled in the narrative. It is also not self-indulgence. Self-indulgence is often about avoiding pain by chasing fleeting pleasure. Self-compassion is about giving ourselves what we truly need for our long-term well-being, which might sometimes mean choosing a difficult but healthy path over an easy but harmful one. And finally, it is not the same as self-esteem. Self-esteem is often conditional, based on our successes and how we measure up against others. It is fragile and can easily collapse in the face of failure. Self-compassion is a stable, unconditional source of kindness that is available to us precisely when we fail, when we are feeling our worst. It is a way of relating to ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a dear friend. The embodiment of this unconditional compassion is found in a powerful story from the life of the Buddha. In his community of monks, there was a man named Putigata Tissa. He had contracted a dreadful skin disease, which caused his body to be covered in weeping, oozing sores. The illness progressed until his robes became stuck to his skin with pus and blood, and the smell from his body was so foul that no one could bear to be near him. His brother monks, overcome with disgust, abandoned him completely. They left him to lie alone in his own filth, suffering and waiting to die. When the Buddha heard of the monk's condition, he did not send a delegate or offer instructions from afar. He went himself. He quietly entered the hut where Tissa lay. With his own hands, he began to boil water. Then, with the utmost gentleness, he approached the suffering monk. Showing no sign of disgust, he began to wash the monk's body, carefully soaking the robes to separate them from the raw sores. He cleaned his wounds, applied medicine, and dressed him in fresh, clean robes. As he was tending to Tissa, the other monks, hearing what was happening, gathered at the doorway, their heads bowed in shame. After he had finished, the Buddha turned to them and delivered a teaching that would resonate for millennia. "Monks," he said, "you have no mother and no father here to take care of you. If you do not take care of one another, then who else will? Know this, whoever would tend to the sick and the suffering is, in truth, tending to me, and whoever would wish to tend to me should tend to the sick." In this profound act, the Buddha completely identified himself with the most wretched, abandoned, and suffering being he could find. He demonstrated that true compassion makes no exceptions. It does not turn away from that which is unpleasant or difficult. It moves towards suffering, not away from it. This story is a lesson for how we should treat others, but its deepest application is for how we must learn to treat ourselves. Each of us is, at times, that sick monk. We all have parts of ourselves that we deem unworthy or repulsive. It might be our shame, our jealousy, our deep-seated fears, or the memory of our greatest failures. These are the oozing sores of our inner world. Our typical reaction is to do exactly what the monks did. We abandon these parts of ourselves. We try to ignore them, disown them, and hide them away in the dark, hoping they will disappear. The practice of self-compassion is the practice of becoming the Buddha for ourselves. It is the courage to walk into the dark hut of our own pain. It is the willingness to gently wash our own wounds with the warm water of our attention, to tend to our own suffering with a kindness that makes no demands and offers no judgment. It is the radical act of refusing to abandon any part of ourselves. When we can learn to do this for ourselves, our capacity for compassion for others blossoms naturally and effortlessly. When we have intimately tended to our own wounds, we recognize the same wounds in others. We see their anger, their fear, or their arrogance not as a personal failing, but as a symptom of their own suffering, their own abandoned parts. The harsh lines of judgment begin to soften. The illusion of a separate me with my problems and a separate you with your problems begins to dissolve. We see, as the koans constantly point out, that all beings share the same fundamental predicament, the same fears, the same attachments, the same deep longing for peace and happiness. This realization of our common humanity is the wellspring from which all true compassion flows. This kindness, this gentle heart, is the ultimate healing balm for the anxious mind. It soothes the inner critic and provides a safe inner refuge. When we establish this new, compassionate relationship with ourselves, it inevitably begins to change our relationship with the world around us. A heart that is at peace with itself begins to question the values of a world that is not. It begins to look at the frantic, endless pursuit of material wealth and status and ask, is this truly the path to happiness? A compassionate mind begins to see the suffering inherent in the relentless drive for more, and it starts to seek a different kind of wealth. When we learn to treat ourselves with the same unconditional compassion that the Buddha showed to the sick monk, a fundamental shift begins to occur. A kind heart is not a judgmental one. It does not constantly measure itself against others, and it does not feel the gnawing ache of not enough. This inner kindness naturally leads us to question the values of a world that is built almost entirely on the premise of not enough. We begin to look at the ceaseless, frantic pursuit of material wealth and status, and we start to ask a very simple question. Is this frantic accumulation actually making us happy? From the moment we are born, we are immersed in the gospel of consumerism. It is the air we breathe, the water we drink. It whispers to us from every screen, every billboard, every advertisement. The promise is always the same. Happiness is something you can purchase. Peace of mind can be found in the next upgrade. A sense of self-worth can be acquired with the right brand. Fulfillment is just one more transaction away. This promise creates a devastatingly effective and endless loop of desire and disappointment. We feel a lack. We desire an object we believe will fill it. We acquire the object, and for a brief, fleeting moment, we feel a thrill. But the underlying feeling of lack soon returns because it was never caused by the absence of the object in the first place. And so, the cycle begins anew, a treadmill of wanting and getting that provides endless motion but no arrival. This is a core engine of modern anxiety. We rarely stop to consider the hidden costs of this pursuit. We see the price tag on an item, but we do not see the cost in life hours spent at a job we may not love to earn the money to buy it. We do not see the mental cost, the psychic weight of every possession that must now be stored, cleaned, insured, maintained, and worried about. Our possessions, which promised freedom, can quickly become our jailers. Our cluttered homes become a reflection of our cluttered minds, both filled with things we do not truly need. The Zen path offers a radical alternative. It proposes that true wealth is not found in accumulation, but in liberation. It champions a life of simplicity, not because poverty is inherently virtuous, but because simplicity is a direct path to freedom. By consciously choosing to live with less, we free up our most precious and finite resources, our time, our energy, and our mental bandwidth. We untether our sense of well-being from the volatile and uncontrollable world of external things. and we begin to cultivate a source of wealth that can never be taken from us. The profound power of this inner wealth is perhaps best illustrated by a story from ancient Greece, a story that, while not Buddhist in origin, perfectly captures the spirit of Zen. It is the famous encounter between two of the most powerful men alive at the time, Alexander the Great and Diogenes, the cynic. Alexander was, by any conventional measure, the master of the world. He commanded vast armies, ruled over empires, and possessed a fortune beyond imagining. Diogenes was a philosopher who had renounced all of it. He lived in a large ceramic jar in the marketplace, owning nothing but the simple robe on his back. He had concluded that the less a man needed, the closer he was to the divine. Alexander, having conquered Corinth, was intrigued by tales of this philosopher who wanted nothing. He went to the marketplace with his retinue of generals and soldiers and found Diogenes sunning himself. Alexander, the most powerful man on earth, stood before this man who had nothing, casting a shadow over him. "I am Alexander the Great," he announced. Diogenes, squinting up at him, replied simply, "And I am Diogenes the dog." Impressed by the philosopher's utter lack of fear or awe, Alexander made him a magnificent offer. "Ask of me any favor you wish," he said. It was a blank check from the world's most powerful bank. Alexander could have given him a palace, a fortune in gold, anything he could possibly name. Diogenes looked at the emperor, at the man who had everything, and he made his request. "Stand out of my light," he said. Alexander's soldiers began to laugh at the audacity, the apparent disrespect, but Alexander was stunned into silence. Here was a man whose happiness was so complete, so self-contained, that there was literally nothing the master of the world could give him to improve it. In fact, the only thing this great emperor was capable of doing for him was taking something away: the simple, free, and abundant warmth of the sun. Alexander turned to his laughing generals and said something they would never forget. "Truly, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." This encounter reveals two profoundly different definitions of wealth. Alexander's wealth was based on what he could acquire and control. Diogenes' wealth was based on the number of things he could happily do without. Who was the freer man? Who was the more powerful? The man who needed to conquer the world to feel secure, or the man who needed nothing from the world and was therefore its true master? Diogenes had discovered the ultimate treasure, the one spoken of in all wisdom traditions: contentment. Contentment is not resignation. It is not a joyless, passive acceptance of a miserable life. It is the vibrant, joyful, and liberating realization that our inner well-being does not and cannot depend on external conditions. It is a deep-seated okayness with the present moment, a freedom from the ache of wanting. This is the only form of wealth that can never be diminished by a stock market crash, stolen by a thief, or lost to the ravages of time. This ancient wisdom is not a call for all of us to go and live in a barrel. It is an invitation to practice conscious simplicity. It is an invitation to begin questioning the gospel of consumerism. Before we acquire something new, we can ask ourselves, will this truly add to my well-being? Or will it become another burden? Am I buying this from a place of genuine need or from a place of anxiety and lack? It is an invitation to discover the joy of letting go, the lightness that comes from decluttering our homes and our lives. It is a shift in focus from acquiring more things to cultivating richer experiences, deeper relationships, and more meaningful skills. This journey into outer simplicity is a powerful practice, but it is most potent when it is mirrored by a journey into inner simplicity. The constant noise of the external world, with its demands and its advertising, is often just a reflection of the constant noise of our own restless minds. To find a truly unshakable peace, we must learn to cultivate a space of stillness within, a sanctuary of silence that can exist even in the midst of a chaotic world. A life of compassionate simplicity begins to free us from the burden of external clutter. But this outer decluttering is only half of the journey. For even in the most minimalist home, even in the most remote and silent wilderness, we can still be tormented by a relentless inner chaos. Our modern world is not just saturated with physical things. It is saturated with noise. There is the literal noise of the city, the constant hum of traffic, the ringing of phones, the cacophony of a world in a hurry. But there is a deeper, more pervasive noise, the ceaseless digital deluge. We are bombarded by a tsunami of information, an endless scroll of opinions, alerts, updates, and advertisements that fragments our attention, agitates our nervous systems, and leaves us feeling perpetually distracted and drained. We have become information sick, and the primary symptom is the loss of our own inner silence. Our immediate response to this feeling of being overwhelmed is to dream of escape. We imagine that true peace and quiet can only be found on a secluded beach, in a cabin deep in the woods, or during a week-long silent retreat. We believe that silence is an external condition, a place we must travel to. But this is another form of seeking out there. While a quiet environment can be a great gift, the most profound and sustainable silence is not a place you can go to. It is a space you must learn to cultivate within yourself. It is a skill, an art, and a sanctuary that you can carry with you everywhere, even into the heart of the storm. There is a beautiful old story that illustrates this perfectly. A great king, wishing to find the most perfect depiction of peace, announced a grand prize for the artist who could capture its true essence in a painting. Artists from all over the land submitted their work. The king looked at many canvases, depicting what we typically associate with peace. There was a painting of a calm, mirror-still lake, nestled among gently rolling hills. There was another of a quiet, sun-drenched meadow, where sheep grazed contentedly. They were all beautiful paintings, but the king felt they were missing something. The painting he finally chose shocked the entire court. It depicted a scene of tremendous chaos and power. A massive, roaring waterfall thundered down a jagged cliff face, sending clouds of spray into the air. The sky above was dark and heavy with storm clouds, and a jagged streak of lightning split the gloom. It seemed to be the very opposite of peace. But the king beckoned the courtiers closer and pointed to a tiny detail they had missed. There, in a small crevice in the rock face, tucked right beside the deafening cascade of water, a small mother bird had built her nest. She was sitting on her eggs, her expression one of perfect, undisturbed calm. She had found a sanctuary in the very heart of the turmoil. This, the king declared, is true peace. For peace is not a place where there is no noise, no trouble, or no hard work. Peace is to be in the midst of all those things and still be calm in your heart. This is the silence we seek in Zen. It is not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of the mother bird in her nest. The roaring waterfall is the chaos of the world, and it is also the ceaseless flow of our own thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The practice of meditation is not about trying to stop the waterfall. That is an impossible task that only leads to frustration. The practice is about learning to build that inner nest. It is about finding that quiet, unwavering center of awareness that can rest, undisturbed, while the torrent of thoughts and feelings continues to flow. When we first sit down to practice, the noise of our own mind can seem more deafening than any external sound. The waterfall seems to be at its most ferocious. But if we persist with gentle patience, something remarkable happens. We begin to notice tiny gaps. For a fraction of a second, between one thought and the next, there is a space, a pause. This space is the beginning of silence. At first, it is fleeting and easily missed. But as we continue to practice, as we continue to gently bring our attention back to an anchor like the breath, these gaps, these moments of pure, silent awareness, begin to widen. We are creating space in our own minds. We are building our nest. This inner silence is not a dead, empty void. It is a rich, vibrant, and deeply alive state. It is the silence of a deep forest, teeming with life, but free from jarring noise. It is a state of profound receptivity. It is from this inner stillness that our deepest wisdom arises. Our best ideas, our most creative solutions, our most compassionate impulses rarely come from a frantic, agitated mind. They emerge from the quiet. When we allow the muddy water of our thinking to settle, the natural clarity at the bottom is revealed. Our mind is like a radio that is usually caught between stations, producing a constant stream of static. The practice of cultivating silence is like carefully, patiently turning the dial until we tune into a clear, strong signal, the quiet, reliable signal of our own innate wisdom. We do not need to wait for a special retreat to begin this practice. We can build our nest in the small moments of our day. While you wait for your computer to boot up, take 3 conscious breaths and simply listen to the sounds around you without labeling them. While you are stopped at a red light, instead of reaching for your phone, feel the sensation of your hands on the steering wheel and the feeling of stillness in your body. Each of these is a micro-practice in cultivating silence. We can also practice a form of digital simplicity, consciously curating our information diet, turning off non-essential notifications, and creating intentional periods of screen-free time to allow our nervous systems to settle. The practice of cultivating inner silence is, ultimately, the practice of learning how to listen. We quiet the incessant chatter of our own opinions, judgments, and plans so that we can hear something more subtle, more real. In this stillness, we stop listening to our thoughts and begin listening for the quiet truth of reality itself. And when we are finally quiet enough to hear it, what does that truth say? The Zen answer is that it says nothing at all. It simply points. It points to the direct, concrete, and profoundly simple reality of what is right here, right now, right in front of us. When our minds become a quiet sanctuary, a nest of stillness in the midst of life's roaring waterfall, we create the possibility of truly perceiving the world. We have emptied our cup of preconceptions, and we have learned to be present with what is. This leads to one of life's ultimate questions, a question that has driven philosophers, theologians, and seekers for millennia. What is the nature of truth? What is the fundamental reality that lies beneath all our ideas and experiences? In the West, we have been conditioned to believe that the answer to such a profound question must itself be profound, complex, and abstract. We search for a grand, unifying theory, a complex philosophical system, a set of sacred laws that can explain everything. We expect the ultimate truth to be found in a book, a lecture, or a revelation from on high. The Zen tradition approaches this question from a completely different direction. It does not seek to build a system, but to dismantle one. It suggests that the truth is not hidden in a complex formula, but is hiding in plain sight, obscured only by the very mind that is searching for it. This is perfectly encapsulated in one of the most famous koans, an exchange between a monk and the master Zhaozhou. The monk approached the master with the most profound question one could ask in that context. He asked, "What is the meaning of the patriarch Bodhidharmas coming from the West?" This was not a simple historical query. It was a coded, traditional way of asking, what is the living heart of Zen? What is the ultimate, essential truth that was so important it had to be transmitted all the way from India to China? What is the point of all this? The monk was asking for the secret password, the core principle, the final summary of the entire teaching. He was expecting a phrase of deep, philosophical significance. Zhao did not offer him a quote from the scriptures. He did not launch into a discourse on the nature of mind. He did not give the monk a single abstract idea to cling to. Instead, he simply glanced out at the monastery courtyard and replied, "The cypress tree in the courtyard." Let this answer land. Feel the way the logical mind immediately tries to grapple with it. The first temptation is to treat it as a metaphor or a symbol. We think, the cypress tree must represent something. Perhaps it represents enlightenment, because it is firmly rooted in the earth, but its branches reach for the heavens. Or perhaps it symbolizes the axis of the world. To engage in this kind of thinking is to fall immediately into the trap the monk was in. It is to remain in the world of concepts, to try and solve the koan with the very intellect it is designed to short-circuit. Zhao was not offering a symbol to be interpreted. His answer was a radical act of direct pointing. It was a compassionate refusal to indulge the monk's conceptual hunger. The monk's question assumed that the meaning of Zen was an idea, a piece of information that could be spoken and understood. Zhao's answer completely subverted that assumption. He was, in effect, saying, "You are looking for the truth up there, in the clouds of abstract thought. You are looking for it in the past, in the story of a patriarch who has been dead for centuries. But you are looking in the wrong place. The truth is not an idea. The truth is this." And this was the solid, undeniable, living reality of the cypress tree standing right there in the courtyard. The ultimate truth is not a secret. It is the texture of the tree's bark. It is the precise shade of green of its needles. It is the feeling of the cool breeze moving through its branches. It is shockingly, gloriously, and profoundly ordinary. Zhao was not giving the monk something new to think about. He was giving him something to see, to experience directly, without the distorting filter of his analytical mind. This is the very essence of the Zen method. It is a constant, compassionate, and sometimes ruthless effort to bring the student out of the world of second-hand ideas and into the world of first-hand, direct experience. This points directly to the heart of our anxiety. The anxious mind is a mind that lives in a world of abstractions. It is tormented by stories, by concepts of what might go wrong, what other people might be thinking, or how we are failing to live up to an ideal. It is a mind that has lost contact with the grounding, solid reality of the present moment. You can be anxious about the concept of financial security. You can be anxious about the idea of a future illness, but you cannot be anxious about the simple, concrete reality of this cypress tree. In the pure moment of perceiving the tree, its shape, its color, its presence, the narrative spinning, anxious mind falls silent. There is only seeing, and in that seeing, there is peace. This method of direct pointing is a consistent theme in Zen. When another master, Yunmen, was asked the ultimate question, "What is the Buddha?" he replied with the most profane and mundane answer he could think of: a dried stick, which was a common tool used for personal hygiene. He used this shocking answer to violently smash the student's lofty, idealized, and sacred concept of Buddha, forcing him to look for the truth not in some heavenly realm, but in the most earthy and overlooked realities of life. When a student asked, "What is the Tao, the Great Way?" another master replied, "Everyday mind is the way. Your ordinary, everyday consciousness, when freed from its attachments and delusions, is the path itself." The teaching is this: the world itself is the one true scripture. The ultimate truth is not written in ink. It is written in the way light falls on a dusty floor, in the taste of a glass of water when you are thirsty, in the intricate pattern of a single leaf. The universe is constantly and tirelessly preaching the Dharma. Our only task is to become quiet and simple enough to receive the sermon. We must learn to read the book of reality, not just the books about reality. When we finally let go of our search for a grand, abstract answer, we are free to encounter the world with a new sense of wonder and intimacy. The truth was never hidden. We were simply looking for it in all the wrong places. We were like a person wearing glasses, searching frantically all over the house for the glasses that are already perched on their own nose. The cypress tree in the courtyard is not a clue to the puzzle. It is the answer, standing right before us, patiently waiting to be seen. And when we truly see it, when we have that moment of direct, unmediated encounter with reality, a moment where the thinking mind and its conceptual filters fall away, completely your entire world can be turned upside down in an instant. This sudden shattering of illusion, this direct seeing of things as they are, is the great breakthrough of Zen. It is the moment we realize the gate was never locked. The path of Zen is often one of patient, daily practice. It is the gradual work of washing our bowls, of watching our breath, of tending to the garden of our mind. It is a slow and steady journey of cultivating awareness. But within this gradual path, there exists the possibility of a sudden, lightning flash of insight. It is a moment where the clouds of confusion do not just thin, but are blasted apart, revealing the clear, open sky of our true nature. This moment is called Satori, or Kensho, in Japanese. It is not the end of the journey, but a fundamental, irreversible shift in perspective. It is the moment we truly see the cypress tree in the courtyard. The koan is a tool specifically designed to create the conditions for such a breakthrough. It is not a problem to be solved through gradual, linear thinking. It is an immense, singular pressure applied directly to the egoic mind. The student wrestles with the koan, unable to solve it with logic, unable to abandon it. This process builds up a tremendous energy, a great doubt. The mind becomes like a spiritual pressure cooker, and Satori is the moment that pressure is suddenly released, not in an explosion, but in a silent, luminous flash of understanding. To grasp the nature of this sudden awakening, we must turn to one of the most brilliant and subtle koans, the story of the goose in the bottle. A master presented his student with this problem. A man raises a tiny gosling inside a glass bottle. He feeds it every day through the bottle's narrow neck. The gosling grows and grows until it becomes a magnificent, full-sized goose, completely filling the bottle. It is now trapped. The master then delivers the challenge. You must get the goose out of the bottle. In doing so, you cannot break the bottle, and you must not harm the goose. The logical mind immediately recognizes this as an impossibility. It is a perfect trap. If the goose is a physical goose and the bottle is a physical bottle, the problem has no solution. The mind spins its wheels, searching for a trick. Is the bottle made of some magical, flexible material? Is the goose a metaphor for something else? Is there a clever play on words I am missing? The student is encouraged to pour all of his energy into this impossible problem, to live with it day and night, until his rational, problem-solving mind is brought to a state of complete and utter exhaustion. He is utterly stuck. The story goes that a student named Rico had been grappling with this koan for a very long time. He had tried every conceivable answer, and the master had rejected them all. Finally, at his wit's end, he went to the master, likely to confess his failure. The master saw him coming. He didn't wait for a question or a report. He simply called out the student's name with force and clarity, Rico. Rico, without thinking, out of a natural, instantaneous reflex, answered, "Yes, master." In that moment, the master leaned in, his eyes perhaps gleaming with enlightened mischief, and declared, "There, the goose is out." And in that instant, Rico's mind was opened, and he understood what happened here. What magic was in this simple exchange? To understand, we must see what the elements of the koan truly represent. The bottle is our own mind. It is the set of problems, beliefs, and assumptions that we feel trapped inside. The bottle is the story we tell ourselves. I am an anxious person. I am not good enough. I am stuck in this impossible situation. The goose, beautiful and alive, is our true nature. It is our boundless, free, and vibrant awareness, our original face. The student, Rico, was making a fundamental mistake that we all make. He believed the story. He believed that the goose's true, free nature was actually factually trapped inside the bottle of his conceptual problem. He was trying to solve the problem from within the prison of his own assumptions. The master's genius was to ignore the problem entirely. He did not offer a solution to the riddle of the bottle. He did something much more direct. When he called out Rico, he was not addressing the struggling, problem-solving ego. He was calling directly to the goose. He was calling to the real Rico, the immediate, present moment awareness that exists prior to all thought and all problems. Rico's response, "Yes, master," was the key. It was not a clever, thought-out answer. It was spontaneous. It was effortless. It was pure, unhesitating presence. In that moment, he was not the man trying to solve a koan. He was simply Rico, responding. It was the goose, effortlessly being itself, honking freely in the open air. The master's triumphant declaration, "There, the goose is out," was simply pointing to a truth that had been present all along. The goose was never in the bottle. Our true nature is never trapped by our thoughts about it. Our freedom is not a future prize to be won by solving our problems. It is our inherent nature, immediately accessible the moment we step outside of the story of our problems. The prison door was never locked. In fact, there was no door. This moment of seeing is satori. It is not the gaining of new information. It is a radical shift in perception. It is the moment you realize you have been trying to escape from a prison whose bars are made of shadows. The experience is often one of immense relief, of spaciousness, and often of deep, cosmic laughter at the sheer simplicity of it all, at the cosmic joke of having searched so desperately for something that was never lost. This awakening does not mean that life's problems magically disappear. The enlightened person still experiences challenges, loss, and pain. The bottle of a new problem will inevitably appear, but the relationship to it is fundamentally different. One no longer identifies with the goose in the bottle. One no longer believes the story of being trapped. Problems are seen for what they are: temporary, mental formations that arise and pass away in the vast, open space of awareness. They are dealt with from a place of freedom and clarity, not from a place of constriction and fear. This moment of breakthrough, this seeing that our freedom is our nature and not a goal, changes everything. So what happens the day after? After the goose is out, What does a liberated life look like? Does one simply sit in blissful contemplation, detached from the world? The Zen answer is far more grounded, more human, and more beautiful. One returns to the world, to the marketplace, but with new eyes. One returns to the simple, profound, and sacred rhythm of ordinary life. After the sudden, liberating flash of insight, after the goose is finally, effortlessly out of the bottle, the seeker's first question is almost always, what happens now? Our minds, steeped in stories of transformation, immediately begin to construct fantasies of what a life of enlightenment must look like. We imagine a state of perpetual bliss, a life free from all difficulty, perhaps even the development of supernatural powers. We imagine a person floating on a cloud of serenity, so detached from worldly concerns that they would certainly never have to worry about mundane chores, like taking out the garbage or doing the dishes again. Life, we assume, must become permanently spectacular. The Zen tradition, with its characteristic groundedness and humor, thoroughly demolishes this spiritual fantasy. A famous Zen saying encapsulates the reality perfectly. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. On the outside, nothing may change at all. The daily routines, the responsibilities, the simple tasks of living, all continue. The transformation is not in the content of one's life, but in the consciousness with which one lives it. The miracle is not that you no longer have to chop wood. The miracle is discovered in the chopping of the wood. No one embodies this more perfectly than Mumonkan, the enlightened householder we met earlier. After he had thrown his entire fortune into the river, he and his family did not retire to a life of idle contemplation. They settled into a simple existence, weaving and selling bamboo baskets in the local market to support themselves. One day, someone, impressed by his wisdom, asked him to describe his spiritual practice, to reveal the nature of his miraculous powers. Mumonkan's reply is one of the most profound and important statements in the Zen canon. He said, "My miraculous power and wondrous activity is this: I draw water and I chop wood." Let us feel the weight of this statement. He is not being coy, and he is not denying that he possesses a miraculous power. He is radically redefining it. For the ordinary, anxious mind, drawing water and chopping wood are chores. They are means to an end. While doing them, the mind is elsewhere. It is complaining about the work, dreaming of being done, regretting the past, or worrying about the future. There is a sense of a separate, discontented me who is being forced to perform a tedious task. There is friction, resistance, and boredom. For the enlightened mind of Mumonkan, the experience is completely different. When he is chopping wood, there is only chopping. There is the sharp, clean scent of the pine. There is the heft of the axe in his hands. There is the satisfying thud of the blade as it bites into the wood. There is the feeling of his breath and muscles working in perfect, harmonious unison. The mental commentary is gone. The sense of a separate me who is performing the action dissolves. The chopper, the chopping, and the wood become one single, seamless, and vibrant reality. This total absorption, this complete and joyful immersion in the most ordinary of tasks, free from all resistance and mental chatter, this is the miracle. It is a state of grace, completely unavailable to the fragmented, striving mind. It is the end of the war between what you are doing and what you think you should be doing. This is the ultimate integration of the spiritual and the ordinary. We often think of the spiritual life as involving an absolute reality, timeless, formless, empty, and we think of our daily life as the relative world of forms, deadlines, and responsibilities. The great achievement of practice is not to escape the relative for the absolute, but to see the absolute in the relative. It is to live in the world of form, while being fully grounded in the truth of formlessness. It is to be able to file your taxes with the same focused, present attention as you would bring to a formal meditation, fully aware that you and the taxes are both temporary, interconnected phenomena arising in the vast space of awareness. After the goose is out of the bottle, it simply lives its goose life. It flies, it swims, it honks, it eats. It does so naturally, spontaneously, and without an internal monologue about whether it is being a good goose. After awakening, the human being simply lives their human life. They work, they eat, they laugh with friends, they feel joy, they feel sadness when confronted with loss, but they do it all from a place of spacious freedom. The tyrannical story of me and my problems is no longer running the show. The incessant desire for life to be other than it is has subsided. This is perhaps the most liberating message for those of us living busy, modern lives. It means you do not have to radically change your external circumstances to find freedom. You do not need to quit your job, abandon your family, or move to a monastery. You can find liberation right here, in the life you already have. You can discover the miraculous in your office, in your kitchen, on your commute. The path is not about changing what you do, but about changing how you do it. Any task, when performed with full, choiceless, and non-judgmental attention, becomes a form of meditation. Any moment, when fully inhabited, is a moment of enlightenment. This is the end of frantic seeking. When the wondrous activity is found in drawing water, there is nowhere else to go. When the miraculous is present in chopping wood, there is nothing more to find. The desperate search for special states, for visions, for spectacular experiences, comes to an end. The sublime is discovered in the simple. The sacred is revealed in the ordinary. A person living in this way, grounded in the reality of their moment-to-moment experience, develops a profound inner stability. They are no longer dependent on the praise of others to feel good, nor are they crushed by the blame of others. Their well-being is not tethered to the fluctuating opinions of the world, because they have found a deep and unshakable center of gravity within themselves. This unwavering peace, which remains still even as the winds of fortune change, is the great harbor of equanimity. A life of chopping wood and carrying water is one of profound, simple presence. To live this way is to find the miraculous in the mundane. This practice cultivates a deep inner stability, a center of gravity that is not easily disturbed. But this stability is not meant for a life lived in isolation. It is constantly tested by the unavoidable weather patterns of human existence. In Buddhism, these are known as the 8 worldly winds. They blow through every life, without exception. They are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. Think of the ordinary, anxious mind as a leaf in a storm, completely at the mercy of these winds. When the wind of praise blows, we are lifted high on a current of elation and pride. When the wind of blame follows, as it inevitably does, we are dashed to the ground in a spiral of shame and despair. A little gain, a promotion, a small windfall, and we feel secure and happy. A little loss, a setback, a disappointment, and our world feels as though it is collapsing. Our inner state is entirely dependent on these external, uncontrollable conditions. This dependency is a core engine of anxiety, because deep down, we know the winds will always change. We live in constant fear of the next shift in the weather. The goal of Zen practice is not to stop the winds from blowing. That is an impossible fantasy. The winds of life will always blow. The goal is to become like a great mountain. Storms rage on the mountain's slopes. The sun beats down upon it. Blizzards cover it in ice, and gale-force winds howl around its peaks. But the mountain itself remains unmoved. It sits in a state of profound, unshakable stability. It feels the weather, but it is not defined by it. This is the quality of equanimity, or upekkha. It is the grand, quiet harbor of the heart. It is crucial to understand that equanimity is not the same as indifference. Indifference is a cold, closed-hearted state. It is a form of aversion, a way of shutting down to avoid being hurt. Indifference says, "I don't care." It is a contraction of the heart. Equanimity, on the other hand, is a state of radical openness and warmth. It is born not of apathy, but of wisdom and compassion. The heart of equanimity is so vast that it has room for everything. It feels pleasure without clinging to it. It feels pain without resisting it. It hears praise without becoming arrogant, and it hears blame without collapsing. The mountain feels the storm, but it knows it is not the storm. It has the space to allow all experiences to arise and pass away, without being knocked off its center. A powerful story illustrates this quality in action. A Zen master was walking along a riverbank when he saw a scorpion flailing in the water, on the verge of drowning. Moved by compassion, the master carefully reached down to scoop the creature out and place it safely on the bank. As he lifted it, the scorpion, acting on its instinct, twisted and stung his hand. The master, reacting to the sharp pain, flinched, and the scorpion fell back into the river. Without hesitation, the master reached down again to save the creature, and again, the scorpion stung him. This happened several times. A man who was watching from a short distance away, bewildered by this spectacle, approached the master. "Venerable sir," he said, "are you a fool? You must see that this creature will sting you every time you try to touch it. Why do you persist?" The master looked calmly at his swollen, red hand, and then at the man. "Dear friend," he replied, "it is the nature of the scorpion to sting. It is my nature to save." This is a perfect demonstration of equanimity. The master's actions were not determined by the scorpion's actions. He was not caught in a reactive loop of "you hurt me, so I will hurt you," or "you are ungrateful, so I will abandon you." His actions arose from a deep internal source, his own unshakable commitment to compassion. He was acting, not reacting. He fully accepted the reality of the situation. He did not waste energy wishing the scorpion were a more grateful or gentle creature. He saw its nature clearly. Scorpions sting. This clear seeing allowed him to act without personal drama, without anger, and without resentment. The painful sting of the scorpion is a metaphor for all the worldly winds. It is the sting of blame, of loss, of pain. The master felt the sting. It was real, but it did not alter his fundamental nature or his chosen course of action. His inner peace was the mountain. The scorpion's sting was the wind. We cultivate this inner mountain through our daily practice. We watch our own minds as the small winds of life blow through. We notice how a single compliment can make us feel puffed up. We notice how a minor criticism can send us into a defensive spiral. We just observe this, without judgment. This seeing is the first step toward freedom, and we cultivate it through wisdom, by continually reminding ourselves of the truth of impermanence. Praise is fleeting. Blame is fleeting. Our reputation, our wealth, our very body sit is all changing, like the weather. When we know this in our bones, we naturally begin to hold these things more lightly. A heart that has found this balance, this profound stability, is a heart that is truly free. It is no longer a slave to circumstance. It is a heart that is both immensely peaceful and immensely compassionate. A person who has cultivated such a heart does not need to retreat from the world to protect their peace. On the contrary, their peace becomes a source of strength that allows them to engage with the world's suffering more fully, more effectively, and more lovingly than ever before. The journey that began as a personal search for an end to one's own anxiety naturally blossoms into a selfless wish to help all beings find their way out of suffering. This is the final, compassionate turn of the path, the return from the mountain peak to the bustling, messy, and beautiful world of the marketplace. A life lived in the calm stability of equanimity is a great achievement. To stand like a mountain while the winds of praise and blame, gain and loss howl around you is to find a profound and unshakable freedom. For many spiritual paths, this might be seen as the ultimate goal, a state of personal, inviolable peace. One could, from this mountain peak of realization, simply remain in serene detachment from the messy, suffering world below. But in the great journey of Zen, this is not the final destination. It is a glorious viewpoint, but it is not home. To remain on the mountaintop, alone with one's own peace, is considered a subtle trap, a dead end of enlightenment. The path is not truly complete until the heart, having found its own freedom, turns back toward the world in an act of boundless, unconditional compassion. This entire spiritual journey is masterfully depicted in a classic series of Zen allegories known as the 10 Bulls, or the 10 ox-herding pictures. These simple drawings serve as a map of the unfolding of consciousness. The journey begins with a seeker who has lost his bull. The bull represents our true nature, our original face. At first, the seeker searches frantically, feeling lost and alone. Then, he discovers the bull's tracks. This is like discovering the teachings, the path. After much effort, he catches a first glimpse of the bull, a fleeting insight into his true nature. Then begins the hard work of practice. The pictures show him struggling with the bull, trying to tame it with a rope and a whip. This is the stage of intense discipline, of wrestling with the stubborn, untamed habits of the egoic mind. Gradually, the bull becomes more gentle. The struggle ceases. The next image shows the seeker peacefully riding the bull home, playing a simple melody on his flute. This is the stage of effortless effort, of Wu Wei, where practice becomes natural and harmonious. When he arrives home, a profound shift occurs. The bull disappears. The seeker is left alone. This symbolizes the realization that the self and its true nature were never two separate things. The seeker understands that what he was searching for was what was doing the searching, but the journey goes deeper still. In the next image, the man himself disappears. All that remains is a perfect, empty circle. This is the realization of absolute emptiness, the silent mountaintop of pure, formless awareness. There is no self, no bull, no world. Here, many would say the journey is over. Ultimate reality has been realized, but Zen pushes us further. To cling to this emptiness is to become a ghost in a cave. The ninth picture shows a radical return. The empty circle is replaced by a vibrant image of the world of form. A stream flows, flowers bloom, a bird sings. This is the return to the source, the re-engagement with the world of appearances, but now seen with the eyes of wisdom. It is seeing the mountains as mountains, and the rivers as rivers once again. And this leads to the 10th and final picture, the culmination of the entire path. It is called entering the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands. The figure we see is no longer the lean, striving seeker from the early pictures. He has been transformed into a portly, jolly, barefoot man with a wide, infectious grin. He is often identified with Hote, the laughing Buddha, an embodiment of earthy, human joy. He is not hiding away in a monastery or meditating on a remote peak. He is walking right into the heart of the world, the bustling, noisy, messy marketplace. He is mingling with fishmongers and merchants, with drunkards and children. He is utterly at home in the world. He carries a large cloth sack, said to be filled with candies and gifts for children, and a gourd of wine or sweet elixir. He is not a stern ascetic who denies the simple pleasures of life. He is a celebration of it. But the most important detail is the miraculous effect of his presence. The caption to the picture often reads, "Without recourse to magical powers, he causes the withered trees to bloom." His very being, his simple, joyful, compassionate presence, is a source of healing and awakening for everyone he meets. He does not need to give formal lectures or complicated sermons. His teaching is his life. His enlightenment is not a private possession. It is a gift he freely offers to the world, just by being himself. This is the embodiment of the Bodhisattva, the enlightened being who, out of infinite compassion, chooses to remain in the world to help all other beings find their own way to freedom. This is the ultimate expression of our practice. The journey that began with a single, anxious self, feeling trapped and alone, has come full circle. We return to the very world that once caused us so much suffering, but we return transformed. We are no longer there to get something from the world, not security, not pleasure, not validation. We are there to give. Our own peace, once so desperately sought, now overflows naturally and becomes a source of peace for others. The personal search for an end to our own anxiety has blossomed into a boundless, compassionate offering to all life. This is the final, beautiful purpose of our journey, to realize our own freedom, so that we may help to free all beings, to become a cause for the withered trees around us to burst into bloom. We began our journey in a quiet room, filled with the loud noise of anxiety. We began with the feeling of being trapped, of being endlessly buffeted by the pressures and worries of a life that felt too heavy to carry. From that place of constriction, we have traveled far. We have walked together through the Gateless Gate, only to find that the gate was an illusion, a trick of our own minds. We have wrestled with the great koans, with the profound no of Mu, and the silence of a single clapping hand. And we have learned that their purpose was not to give us an answer, but to lovingly, ruthlessly silence the frantic questioning of the mind itself. We have searched for our original face and discovered that who we truly are is not the small, anxious self we imagined, but the vast, open awareness in which that self appears. We have learned that the ultimate truth is not hidden in a complex philosophy, but is revealed in the shocking ordinariness of a cypress tree in a courtyard, and that the most profound spiritual practice is found in the simple, mindful act of washing our bowls. We have seen that the mud of our suffering is the very soil from which the lotus of compassion grows, and that the final fruit of this entire journey is not to retreat into a private peace, but to return to the world with open hands, offering the peace we have found to all we meet. If there is one single truth to take from this journey, it is this: peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an achievement to be won, nor is it a prize awarded for your spiritual efforts. It is not the absence of problems, or noise, or pain. Peace is the unwavering mountain that feels the wind, but is not moved by it. It is the quiet bird's nest, resting securely in the heart of the roaring waterfall. It is the spacious, loving awareness that can hold all of life's joys and sorrows without being broken by them. The great, liberating secret of the Gateless Gate is that it was never locked. The freedom we have been so desperately seeking was our own true nature all along. The only barrier was our belief that one existed. You do not need to become someone else to realize this. You do not need to abandon your life and move to a monastery. You already have everything you need. Your own breath, right now, is the perfect anchor to the present moment. Your own awareness is the gentle light that can illuminate the darkest corners of your mind. Your own life, with all its unique beauty and its challenges, is the only koan you ever need to solve. The practice begins now, in this moment. It begins with the choice to meet your own experience, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the difficult, with a little more awareness and a little more kindness. The path is not in front of you. The path is you. The gate is open.